Good, buddy.
Okay, welcome back, Creatures of the Night, to episode 39 of the Collecting Dead Man podcast. I am your host, as always, Steven Zeman, and I want to welcome you back to another week of talking Undertaker merchandise, memories, and more, but with a very special twist this week, as I welcome Eamon Condon onto the podcast to just give us a little bit of his insight of his love of The Undertaker, his experiences at live events, meeting The Undertaker, a little bit of his collection, and then we get started on our first part of our four-part series of watching back the greatest wrestling match story ever told at WrestleMania, between WrestleMania 25 through 28, between Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H. So I want to welcome you here to the podcast, Eamon, and just tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, buddy. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be on here. I got to say, I think I told you privately, but I'll just say on here, this is my first time being on a podcast, so this is it's pretty cool. Yes, just a little bit about me. I'm from Chicago, born and raised, been here my whole life. 25, soon to be 26. I am both a musician / graphic designer, and you kind of already nailed it with a lifelong Undertaker fan. Kind of got into WWE as a whole, and therefore pro wrestling, because growing up with 4 sisters and my mom, not really having a dad or father figure or man in the house that was watching sports or football or anything like that. There was never really a rhyme or reason like for wrestling or any sport for that matter to be on TV in my house. And so just one night in 2007, just shortly after WrestleMania 23, I remember I was just flipping through the channels and I caught like the final minutes of whatever main event was going on Raw. And I remember distinctly seeing Jeff Hardy do a swanton bomb off the top rope and hearing Jim Ross, who I would later find out to be Jim Ross. I didn't know who it was at the time, screaming and commentating and doing the whole 9 yards. And of course, if you remember back in 2007, you would see that iconic scratch logo swipe across the screen at the very end of the show. And so that was my first little taste of like what I was going to discover in professional wrestling. And I remember just with that curiosity of seeing, the WWE logo go across my screen, just wanting to know more. I remember taking that to the computer, and if you can remember the good old days of 2007, the way their website used to look, like the puzzles and the games that they used to have, like that website used to be the shit. But I remember going on there and discovering through their website that they not only had the episodes or the show Monday Night Raw, which I had come across on TV, come to find out, they also had another show called Friday Night SmackDown. And like I said, this was shortly after WrestleMania 23. So I remember like my very, very first memory of The Undertaker was the promo he cut right after Backlash, but the week before that steel cage match with Batista. So like, if you can remember that promo he did right behind just the black curtain wall, and he's holding the world title, and he just talks about next Friday, you step into the demon's playground. That whole promo, that was great. And that was my first taste of him. And that intensity and like how wide his eyes got at the end, then the eye roll and the way, he tilted the head back with the hat hiding him. I remember just being so like enchanted by that and curious by that. I mean, I don't know what word you could put on that really. This was just after my 11th birthday. So, I mean, I was still, a kid who obviously didn't know that there was even a business side to what I was seeing. Mm-hmm. And so that was a very profound memory. And then, you fast forward 7 days, and my first match that I saw of him was that iconic steel cage match that he has with Batista, where it ends in a draw. And, as he's trying to, cradle himself back to the locker room, this guy who I've never seen before, Mark Henry, comes out and just lays him to absolute waste. Then this surfer blonde dude who I've never seen before comes out with a briefcase I've never seen before and just hands it to the referee. And like, for somebody who's just, getting their, feet wet, for lack of a better term, and like just starting to understand wrestling, all of that being thrown at you.
Oh, I know.
It's just so like, what the fuck?
Right?
So that one, like the steel cage match was enough in and of itself. Then you got Mark Henry on top of that, then Edge cashing in. And so now you're learning, how the rules of a steel cage match work. You're learning like who this Mark Henry guy is. You're learning how a Money in the Bank cash in works. You feel so heartbreakingly bad for Undertaker because he's just been decimated over and over and over again. And just that whole experience of like seeing that and then taking that curiosity and running to the computer and learning what I could about Undertaker, and then going on that experience live where Mark Henry's, fallen victim to his mind games all the way up until Unforgiven of that year. And going on that week-to-week journey of watching that live and, seeing the Druids, leave the sand on the ramp, or seeing the Druids stand in the ring. That was my favorite mind game personally. The one Druid standing in the ring waiting. Mark Henry comes out, gets in the ring, has to talk himself into attacking the Druid. You can see he keeps saying week after week, I'm the man who took out the Undertaker. I reign supreme. And he keeps, beating into you. He's not afraid, but you can see. And that's why I love wrestling so much, because it really is a Shakespearean art form. And they tell such beautiful stories without saying a word, because he conveyed how scared he was, but how much he was trying to convince himself, not only the arena full of people, but himself, that he was not scared of that Druid. And you could see it in his face. And so he finally beefs himself up after like 2 or 3 attempts, and he finally grabs that Druid by his neck and starts strangling him. You hear the gong ring, the lights go out, the lights come back on, and all of a sudden you just see him just ragdoll in an empty cloak. And just that visual of just the Druid, the form, whatever that was, disappearing, and seeing Mark Henry just drop that cloak and just look at his hands and just shake in that moment. That to this day has been my favorite mind game. But just going on that journey as an 11-year-old kid, week after week after week, that was that whole, what was that? Because that started in April, May-ish, and went until probably October. So that whole, 4, 5, 6 month stretch even was my first, taste of The Undertaker. And that's like what made me fall in love with him. Just the character work, the story, the mind games, the gong, the Druids. Like nobody else was getting that kind of dedication to their character.
Yeah.
And even to this day, we don't see that.
No, we don't. And that's a very interesting, first impression that you had of The Undertaker. You had him, you felt sympathy for the character, for the man, being, just decimated, beat up by like 3 different people, being through a training match. And because of like the dramatics of the end of that, being carried off by Druids, that perked your interest to learn more about him. And, what's interesting is, you fell in love with him, seeing him at his weakest. And I fell in love with him, seeing him at almost his strongest, defying Stone Cold on his symbol, surrounded by, his pallbearer, his Druids, and everything like that, with the lights and the music, rolling his eyes in the back of his head. So it's like I fell in love with him, when he's a heel, attacking the champion. You fell in love with him when he was champion. He was being attacked. So, it's, you fall in love with the character in different parts of his story. And that just makes the character, it is the best character WWE ever created.
Oh, absolutely. Bar none. I think we've talked about that before in like our direct message conversations, where I've said before, the only 2 strokes of genius I will ever give Vince McMahon credit for are WrestleMania and The Undertaker.
Yes.
But what I think is so profound is that when you really like, if you take a step back and look at it in the macro, who would have ever thought? Because again, there was no plan from get-go that Undertaker was just going to be undefeated for quite literally over 2 decades. Somebody just, pointed out to Undertaker after WrestleMania 18, like, hey, you're 10-0. And, as he was, finishing up the match, he does that iconic where he's counting the number, and that, really began. And it wasn't called the streak at the time. It wasn't until WrestleMania 21 that they started referring to it as his Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak.
I always remember
which was like
counting down, and then 0 becomes Orton. It's like,
yeah, and that video package, like I remember, like, because they were doing it. Because exactly, but my first WrestleMania was on my birthday, WrestleMania 24, March 30th of 2008, and for Edge, they did that same video package where it was the gong ringing with the video showing all of his different wins, and that was one of my favorite like video style packages growing up. And like I was saying, for WrestleMania 21, they were referring to it as the undefeated streak, but it wasn't called the streak, and it wasn't its own like concept or its own like main event match until around WrestleMania 23, 24. Because by Mania 24, that was the first time. I mean, you obviously have to count WrestleMania 13 because he main evented, and that's part of the streak. But the streak was not the streak at WrestleMania 13. Nobody even acknowledged at WrestleMania 13 that he was undefeated. So
it's the championship match, that's what they were contending.
Exactly. So like, while it counts in the grand scheme, it doesn't count in the sense of like the streak story. WrestleMania 24 was the first time the streak was the main event. You could argue, well, it was also because it was the World Heavyweight Championship match, but 2 years later it main evented again, and there was no championship on the line. It was just the streak versus career. So I mean, over time, the streak became more important than the World Championship match. And so what I think is so interesting is that, and kind of ironic in a way, is that the only 2 real like strokes of true genius that Vince had over time became it almost like a
intertwined.
Like, exactly, intertwined, but like in a way that's bigger than you could write, like in a destiny sort of way. Alberto Del Rio, it was my destiny. So it was like it in a weird like, just written in the stars sort of way, they intertwined over decades, where WrestleMania became Undertaker's show. And if you didn't have Undertaker on it, like it wasn't, like it really wasn't WrestleMania anymore.
It's like they both became stronger because of each other.
Exactly. It was almost like divided they stand, but united they were unmatched, unbeatable.
Yeah, I agree. And, you mentioned your first WrestleMania you saw as a fan was WrestleMania 24, but the first WrestleMania that you attended live would be WrestleMania 29. So
correct.
How was
5 years later?
Yes. How was that as an experience for you? It's one of Undertaker's best WrestleMania matches when he faces off against CM Punk. And you mentioned just earlier, just briefly, about the video package. I remember that video package, with the 21 and in the 20 and 1 with his like logo popping up. And then it shows.
And that was all over the WrestleMania Access that year. Everywhere you looked, you could see on the video screens 20 and the 1 was the logo. Yeah. I loved that graphic. That was such a cool concept, and like that made me think that he legitimately was going to do it. And like I thought that
they made him a legitimate contender, stealing an urn, invoking Paul Bearer,
exactly. But like without being oh yeah, no, and I mean I think it's crazy that all happened that way, that like Will Moody, Paul Bearer in real life, died right around then. And I know there are people that like, and I know there are even people in Paul Bearer's family that were like offended by what they did. But I'm one of those fans that's of the belief that Paul Bearer smiled on that whole story and loved that they used that. And I think that made that whole story so much more special. And what I loved is that Punk was bringing up a very interesting thought that nobody was really talking about before in streak matches. Everybody was saying that they had to be the one to beat, like definitively beat him at the show. Like I have to pin him. I have to make him tap out. Punk was being a true chicken shit heel, because he's like, hey, I'll take a count out. I'll make you so mad that you get yourself disqualified. like that's still a loss. I'll take it.
And
so like, and that was just brilliant heel work to me.
And you know what? And then Undertaker rebuts it, saying, the streak may die, but you'll never live to tell about it. And that got my wheels turning.
Right.
Thinking, oh shit, they may break it by Undertaker going ape crazy on him and just beating the shit out of him with something.
I honestly thought there was legitimately 3 or 4 different ways they could have booked it where Punk went over. And again, as a smart fan, you thought that was going to happen because you could tell by that point he had one foot out the fucking door. And so the fact that they took the strap off of him, when in hindsight, they could have done a triple threat elimination match where Punk got eliminated, like he said on his appearance on the Colt Cabana podcast. He's like, you guys literally could have just kept the strap on me, kept the historic championship reign going. Rock or Cena could have pinned me in the first 5 minutes. I'm gone. I still get to say I main evented WrestleMania. Then Vince gets his precious little Rock Cena rematch, and they spend the last 25 minutes, doing a one-on-one match. Which I didn't really mind. Like, they could have done that. But as a smart fan, you knew he had one foot out the door. You knew they fucked him over with taking the strap off him and putting it on The Rock. And you knew that he had been chasing a WrestleMania main event. And the year before, as the champion, he got, he didn't get it again because he and Jericho went on before Rock and Cena. And I mean, you could argue a lot of that entire championship reign of his, he didn't get the respect he deserved because a lot of those shows, he didn't main event. Like a lot of those shows, it was like John Cena and Big Show over this John Laurinaitis bullshit that main evented instead of Punk.
Oh my
God.
Like
seriously, like you could argue a lot of that reign until he turned heel. Like he didn't get the proper respect for it. And there was like a good amount of defenses all the way through that whole reign too. And so you knew as a smart fan that he was very mad, already backstage with the way he was being handled. And he wanted that main event at WrestleMania, and they clearly weren't going to give it to him. So as a smart fan, you felt like maybe Vince is thinking the only thing I could do to keep Punk around is to give him the streak. And so I was thinking for multiple reasons, Punk could be the one. And I remember for that show, my mom was just through and through rooting for Undertaker, and I actually rooted for Punk just because I did.
Oh
I
my God.
to see, because I wanted to. Ironically enough, I was there when the streak died. I was there a year later, but in that moment, I wanted my first WrestleMania to be as historic and as special and as prominent as possible. And yeah, I'll admit it, I wanted to see Punk do it. And he's my Chicago boy. I gotta support my Chicago pride. And there was a bunch of reasons.
From Chicago too, and I supported the Dead Man. Come on now.
Yeah, and where are you right now?
Well, yes, but
for 28 years, I've never left Chicago.
For 28 years of my life, I was in Chicago, so I still.
No, I'm just saying I've always lived here, so I felt like I had a right in a way to do it. I was like, I'm just gonna fuck it. I'm gonna root for this. And seriously, I lost my shit when Punk kicked out of that first tombstone. And because they weren't facing the hard camera when Taker hit it, part of me thought I kept screaming, he's gonna kick out, he's gonna kick out. And then when he did, you thought Paul Heyman went off when Punk kicked out. I was jumping, losing it. I knew even when they did that slow count, where Taker goes for the last ride and Paul Heyman tosses off the urn and they hit him with it.
That's a great spot.
Great spot. And then he, puts the arms over him and he does the tongue out in the eye roll, and they do the slow count. He's kicking out. They're not going to give him the streak on a slow 3 count. I was like, there's no way. And Taker obviously kicks out. My favorite part of that match, if you go back and watch on the live broadcast, my favorite part of that is the crowd is chanting Undertaker, CM Punk, but not that way, not in a cadence. They're doing it at the same time, literally divided in half. Divided in half. Half the crowd is chanting Taker, half the crowd is chanting Punk at the same time. And it sounds like this just audible swarm of beats. Like you can hear fragments of Undertaker, you can hear fragments of CM Punk being said, and it's just overlapping each other. And then as that's happening audibly, you visually see Taker getting up and Punk do the taunt.
Yes.
And you hear Michael Cole. It was so, like, I was there. It was so loud. Michael Cole was screaming in his headset. It is thunderous in MetLife. And like, it was at that point in the match, it was the highest energy. And it was so loud. And it was in an outdoor stadium where the sound goes straight up. So like, it wasn't like we were in Allstate Arena. It wasn't like we were even in, like when we watch Mania 25 later on in a little bit, it's not like we were in a, you know, closed roof place. The sound went straight up and it was still loud as shit. So for anybody who goes back and watches that specific part of the match, just like, even just close your eyes and just listen to that swarm of the crowd just being so into it. And it really was like torn right in half. Half that place really thought Punk was going to do it, and half the place just knew Taker, like, no way he's losing. But it was for that being my first WrestleMania, I mean, there's no words to talk about how grateful I am for that, because I had been trying to go for years, and my first time seeing it on pay-per-view besides 24 was 26, because I didn't see 25 on pay-per-view. I ended up watching it a little bit later on YouTube. 26 I saw on pay-per-view. 27 I wanted to go, and I remember begging my parents, and we weren't able to go, and so I watched it on pay-per-view. I remember begging again to go for 28, and we once again couldn't. And I watched it on pay-per-view. Then I remember begging when the location reveal happened to go to 29. And finally my parents are like, you know what? All right, fine. You get high honor roll this year in high school, and we'll take you. And I did it. I got the high honor roll. I remember showing them, you know, that report card for that semester. And I remember my parents just being like, oh, you were serious about that shit? But to their credit, you know, because they didn't think I was going to do it, but to their credit, they held up their end of the deal, and we went, and I got to see WrestleMania 29 live. But, you know, to really think back and reflect on that, like, not even talking about talent who just appeared on the show. I'm talking talent who worked the show. Mm-hmm. You had Chris Jericho, The Shield, Randy Orton, Big Show, Sheamus. I already said Jericho, but you also had CM Punk's last Mania, which we didn't know at the time, The Undertaker, Triple H, Brock Lesnar, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, John Cena. Like, it was probably star-studded. It was without a doubt. Oh, and you also had Kane, and you had Daniel Bryan, and you had AJ Lee, Dolph Ziggler, Big E Langston, Alberto Del Rio, Jack Swagger. Like, the whole card was great. And that world title match too, Jack Swagger and Del Rio, that's an underrated match in my opinion. Even with the little spots between Zeb Coulter and Ricardo Rodriguez on the outside with the crutches, because Ricardo was on crutches selling the ankle lock that Swagger had been putting him in the weeks leading up to the match. And so they did a really cool spot where Zeb Coulter tried to get at Ricardo, and Del Rio just rolls out of the ring, takes one of Ricardo's crutches from him, and then just holds it up in Zeb's face, almost like a sword, like he's trying to, you know, back him off. I really enjoyed that match. Like, I remember watching that live and being like, this is actually really good. The last, like, if you watch it, like, I mean, it's like a slow build, but the last, you know, 5-10 minutes are good stuff. And that goes right into the first of because they always tried to advertise back in those days, oh, there's 3 main events. So, you know, after that world title match, it went right into Taker Punk, and then into Lesnar, Triple H, and then into Rock Cena. The funny thing is, there was also supposed to be that Funkadactyls match with Brodus Clay, Tensai, and the Funkadactyls against, I know it was the Bellas, but I can't remember what guys they were partnered with. But I know it was supposed to be an 8-man tag, and it's in my program, because I have a program for Mania 29. I got it at that year's Access. And so when you're flipping through the pages, it's one of the matches advertised. Might have been the Usos or something. I can't remember who the guys were that were teamed with the Bellas, but it was a match that was supposed to go on. And like the way it was placed on the card too was so odd. It was supposed to go on after Lesnar Triple H and right before Rock Cena. It was supposed to be like the little like calm down match, like the little, you know what I mean, like where the fans are really into that one match, and then you have the little match that's in between them, where the fans can kind of like use the bathroom with all due respect, or can get ready for the main event. Because like it followed suit with Mania 30 right after the streak died. Literally minutes after Taker crawled to the back and collapsed, they started the Divas Invitational, the fucking Divas Invitational, and then you had the world title match. So like in Vince's fucked up mind, it made sense to go from Brock Lesnar and Triple H to that 8 mixed tag match, but it got scrapped at the last minute. And I remember I think that was like the pilot episode of Total Divas, you seeing the match getting scrapped. Because I remember there was footage of them like getting ready and getting in their gear and then running up to Gorilla and then getting scrapped.
Wow.
But for people who don't know that, there was supposed to be a Funkadactyls 8-man tag match that went on right before Rock Cena, and then that got scrapped. But
interesting.
Yeah, 29 was for sure the last of the star-studded WrestleManias, all up and down the card.
And that's your first one you appeared live. You get a great Undertaker CM Punk match. You rooted for the hometown boy. So,
and that's a big reason why 21 for me has been my lucky number, because I saw the last time the streak was celebrated, and it was when he went 21-0, and that's honestly why I've attested to this day. A big reason why that 21 is my lucky number. Seriously.
Well, it's Undertaker's as well. That was his last one. So, well,
that would make it his unlucky number then, since that was.
Well, then 22 would be. So you said you were there for the streak dying. I can imagine that the crowd reaction is probably the same as it was on the TV. Just the life sucked out of the arena and everybody like wondering, what's going on. So just, briefly encapsulate how did you feel? How did the people around you feel when that actually took place?
All right, so that's a great segue. But before we tie into Mania 30, I don't want people to have the misconception that Mania 29 was the first time I saw Taker live. Because now, obviously Mania 29 was my first live Mania, but I had been trying to see Undertaker live more than once for years. And so like right before my birthday, and Mania 24 was on my birthday of that year, March 30th, right before my birthday, I had 2 choices. So again, this is a kid who's 11, who doesn't know that there's a business side to any of this. I had 2 choices in front of me. Because my mom's like, all right, so for your birthday, I know you really want to see Undertaker, so I'm going to take you, but I don't know what tickets I'm supposed to get. I see, a bunch of different listings for shows. You would have a better idea than me. What am I supposed to get? So my options were to get tickets for Friday Night SmackDown that was on a Tuesday at the Allstate Arena. And I remember as a little kid, that confused the hell out of me. Or I could go to Dubuque, Iowa, which was just on the other side of the Mississippi River, which is about like maybe a 3-hour drive from where we are, because we're obviously on the like furthest east side of Illinois. So you have to drive all the way across to the most west side of Illinois, go across the Mississippi River, and then you're pretty much right there. I think the place was called the 5 Lakes Center, if I'm not mistaken, but it was a small place. So my choices were to either do the Tuesday, Friday Night SmackDown at Allstate Arena, or travel on a Friday to Dubuque, Iowa, to the show called WWE SmackDown Road to WrestleMania.
Oh, nice.
And so my dumb 11-year-old ass made the wrong choice, and I went to the house show, which I didn't know was going to be a house show. And I remember I walked in that place and I saw the ring, and I didn't see the stage anywhere, and the place was really small. And I remember being a little confused by that, but still thinking I was going to see Undertaker.
Of course.
And he wasn't on. Even though he wasn't on the card, though, I think the main event was a tag team match between World Heavyweight Champion Edge and one of the Edge heads, or maybe one of the guys from La Familia. I'm not sure who he was with, but it was against Batista and Kane. I remember that, but Taker was not there. And I was so devastated by that. And what's crazy is that what I ended up missing was a downright historic episode of SmackDown, because they did what Vince is like known for doing. Vince will take his WrestleMania matches and he'll put them together in tag team matches.
Yes.
So like back then he would do it. So like the year before, right before WrestleMania 23, he put Shawn and John together against Batista and Undertaker. And so fast forward for that episode of SmackDown, you had Shawn and Ric Flair teaming up against La Familia in a steel cage handicap match. And Ric Flair got color. Like he got like, so like for like an old school, like 70s fan or like 80s fan who can remember seeing Ric Flair in a steel cage bleeding, that's like probably like one of the last times or the last time you would have seen that, especially in Chicago. And so that's like, for like a novel wrestling fan, that would have been a really special thing to see live. And on top of that, just because of the way things panned out for me, that would have been the one and only time I saw Shawn Michaels wrestle live in a match. Now, I mean, when I saw him at WrestleMania 29, he did his entrance and he got involved in the match. He took a bump and he hit the Sweet Chin music. Even at WrestleMania 32, he came out to his music. He even came out in gear and got the most physical I ever saw. But when it comes to an actual contest, the bell ringing and the whole 9 yards, I never got to see that of Shawn. Had I gone to this SmackDown, I would have, but that just wasn't in the cards for me. Now, probably the biggest low blow of that whole thing that I missed is that
Taker shows up, doesn't he?
Dude, why would you? God damn it! Why would you take that from me? So
I had a feeling you were going there.
You had Edge crawling to the cage door, and then the gong rings, the lights go out, lights come back on, Taker's in the cage right behind Edge, and he just goes off on the whole La Familia to kind of even the odds for Shawn and Rick. And then as he's getting his hands on the Edge heads and Chavo and all that, Edge crawls out of the cage like a damn, like the little weasel heel that he was. Yes, so he still won the match for everybody, but like, I still to this day cannot go back on Peacock or on the network and watch that SmackDown because like I can't. It's too hard for me. It just brings up really bad, just like God damn it feelings for me. But I still like try to just, and I not even try. I choose to look at the glass half full and just be appreciative because there are people that have commented on my Instagram that tell me that they never ever got to see Undertaker live once. And I saw him multiple times, like in different forms. I saw him at house shows. I saw him at Raw. I saw him at Night of Champions. I saw him at WrestleManias multiple times. I saw him inside Hell in a Cell. I saw him as the World Heavyweight Champion for the last time. I saw him compete for the World Heavyweight Championship. And I saw all of this live. And there are people that never got to see him. Exactly. And thank you. And so there are people that never got to see him even once. And so I can sit there and be upset that I made the wrong choice and that I didn't get to see Undertaker for my very first event, and that I didn't get to see Ric Flair, and that as a result, I never got to see Shawn or Rick wrestle. Or I can be grateful as hell that not only did I get to see a live show, and not only did my mom drive me 3 hours to a wrestling show that she, quite frankly, had no interest in, and why would she? And my sisters had no interest in it either. My mom growing up always took me to wrestling shows and would watch them with me, but had no interest in them. Like she just did it because, one, she's my mom, but two, she just, felt bad on a very, real level because growing up, I didn't really have friends and I didn't have I had my sisters, but I didn't have people that I could like watch Undertaker with and experience it with and enjoy it with. Mm-hmm. And so, my mom, like when we would go to the wrestling shows, for the most part, she would just, kind of be on her phone and just kind of doing her thing. But when Undertaker would come out, she knew how much it meant to me. And so I would have to literally like either take her phone from her or, force her to put it in her purse. But like when he was out there, she would give me, the full undivided attention. And I had somebody, there with me to experience it and watch it. And she didn't, understand, like the rules of the match or the story they were telling or how the moves they were, reversing out of and the moves they were not telling, the moves they were choosing to, execute or even go for. She didn't understand it on any sort of level like that, but she knew like the very basics. Like if Taker was going for a pin against, because we saw Night of Champions here in Chicago in 2010. So when Taker got the comeback against Kane and hit the leg drop after, the flying clothesline and the snake eyes and all that stuff, he hit the leg drop and he goes for the 1, 2. And when Kane kicked out, I remember my mom just as loud as me going, ah, when Kane kicked out. So like, like, when it came to like the very basics of the matches and stuff, like she knew, like when to cheer and when to, be like, damn it. She wasn't like completely lost or confused. And so I'm very appreciative that I had, a mother who was, willing to drive me, 3 hours to go see something that she had no real interest in. And in the like freezing cold, mind you, because up here it gets real cold. And that was back in like early March, late February time, because it was right before WrestleMania 24. And they were still kind of building up the stories and promoting the show. And what's more, not only did I see that show live, but I ended up waiting outside of the venue. This was a small venue with a bunch of other fans. And I got to meet Kofi Kingston, who was fresh on the scene. This was back when ECW was, starting to die out. And Vince was turning it into, or was going to turn it into his NXT project. So, Kofi back then was doing the fake accent. And even after the show, when he was signing our autographs, he was still talking with the fake accent. Got to meet Kane, got to meet Jesse and Festus and Big Show. And like,
amazing.
So, again, exactly. So like, again, you can sit there and be upset that you missed out on something, or you can sit there and be really grateful and happy for what you did experience. And so, especially for the fans that like never got to see Undertaker even once, like that genuinely breaks my heart. And so I have always just chosen to just, be very appreciative for what I did get to see and experience, because I would definitely argue in this day and age, it's kind of over. Like there's not, we're not in that time anymore where you can count on once a year, at least you'll see him. Because if this was 2011 and not 2021, I would say to someone who's commenting on my Instagram, like, oh, like, I'm sorry you didn't get to see him yet, but there's always next year, because like, even though it was just once a year, you still had that one chance a year where like you could work all year long, save your money on the side and make enough to get a WrestleMania ticket when they go on sale in November, because damn well the gong's going to ring in February. Like, it's gonna. So just buy your ticket in November. Just, continue to save your money, get your hotel, get your plane. And then once the gong rings, you're set. Because we all knew how it worked back then. The tickets would go on sale in November and they would be, they're decently fair priced. And then once the Royal Rumble would happen and you would have a little bit of the puzzle revealed and you would know who won the Rumble and what kind of the title match scenario was looking like, you would see the tickets kind of go up in price, considerably. But once that gong rang, I mean, those nosebleeds, the 300s would go from $90 to $250, like that in a night. As soon as the gong rang, like WrestleMania went from being WrestleMania to WrestleMania. Yeah. Like it just became a whole nother ball game as soon as the gong rang. And so that's what makes me, really downright upset. Like, if I had the chance 10 years ago, I would tell a fan who didn't get to see him, at least there's next year. But you and I both know that that's not a thing anymore. And so for people who are saying to this day, I never got to see him, like, there's really nothing you can say to that except like try your damnedest to be there in Dallas, because I would argue he's going to do something, be it the Hall of Fame, be it kind of like that where The Rock came out to just do the attendance record, but then we got an impromptu match. We could easily have some Sami Zayn chicken shit heel come out and just do an open challenge match to any past or present star. Taker comes out, does the grand entrance, does a squash match similar to what he did to Cena at 34. That's your send-off. That's your goodbye. Or he could do a full-on match. He could main event night 1 against AJ, or he could join the main event of night 2. I mean, I personally think it's going to be Drew if they do a triple threat between Roman and Brock and a third party, while I would prefer Bobby Lashley because he's been promised that match for how fucking long, and that match would be really, really good, Drew's the one who deserves it, because while he got his moment with the Royal Rumble in front of the fans, once COVID happened, I mean, he didn't even have the Thunderdome. I mean, he was doing his WrestleMania moment defeating Brock Lesnar in front of no one. And what's more, he didn't even just defeat Brock Lesnar, he defeated the Big Show too. And so like and none of it was in front of any of the fans. And so like, and his entire reign wasn't in front of the fans. And so like, I feel like even if he doesn't win the match, and he certainly wouldn't, I think that in terms of fairness and in terms of like who genuinely deserves it, Drew should get it. And so I wouldn't mind Taker and AJ main eventing night one, and that being your send off for Taker, and making night one all about Taker. Then night two being the Brock, Drew, and Roman main event, almost kind of like where in that Royal Rumble itself, the 2020 Royal Rumble, it was the tale of two Rumbles. You know, the first half, it was all about Brock. And then once he was gone and out of the picture, it told an entirely different story. We see the return of Edge. We see all these different things happening, and it feels like two completely different Rumbles. And so you could have that same sort of thing where the first night is all about Undertaker and it's all about his goodbye. And like all throughout the show, you show different, video packages. You start by showing his debut at Survivor Series. You then move on to the streak. You move on to the streak dying. You move on to Roman beating him. Like you move on to then him coming back and beating Cena, and you could show these little clips all throughout the night one, and then it culminates in the main event. And whether Taker goes over or loses, that's a whole other discussion. But you can make night one all about him. Then you've had that moment. You say goodbye. Night two is the turning of the page in the book. Now you see a totally different experience. And that shows, kind of just focus more so on the future, and more so focused on your future talent, and more so focused on Roman, and maybe, more like Bianca and Becky and all sorts of stuff like that. But I feel like that would be a nice way for fans to get like the nostalgia, but also the future. Because I think we can all agree last year's WrestleMania, where it was all reliant on the future, was the least star-studded and maybe the least significant WrestleMania of recent past. I would argue, besides the Sasha and Bianca main event of night one, there was really nothing of significance to take away from Mania 37, and it was a 2-night show, so that's just beyond sad. So I think for the novel fan and for just the longtime fan, having Mania 38 be like divided in half, where the first night is a nostalgia night, kind of focused on Stone Cold being the host, focused on maybe other legends appearing throughout the night, and then culminating in Taker's goodbye. And then night two is just strictly focused on the future. And like I said, focused on Bianca and Seth and Becky and Roman and Drew and all that noise. I think that would be a nice, healthy balance, because last year he literally just said, fuck it, and went all in on the future. And that was just, to me, just a bad move, because everybody was so, by that point, WrestleMania was so dependent on the part-timers coming back. So when you went from having, even so much as 4 part-timers on a WrestleMania card to then having none, like it was just like you didn't wean the fans off the part-timers. You completely cut them cold turkey. And I just feel like, because like really all that was there at Mania 37 in terms of part-time like names was Shane McMahon and Edge.
Yeah.
Am I missing anybody? I don't
think so, but before we get too much off topic, are we
off topic?
I don't even know how we got to WrestleMania 38.
Because I was talking about excuse me. I knew exactly where I was in that point that I was making. And I was talking about how there are fans who never got to see The Undertaker live. And to them, I would say, bust your ass to get to 38, because one of 3 things is going to happen. He's either going to be an advertised match where they make that night about him, or he's just going to do the Hall of Fame, and you'll see him in that respect where he goes on the stage with everybody else and you wave to him. And maybe they take it even further, where like Mania 25, Austin walked out with everybody, But then once they all walked off the stage, you heard Austin's music. He came back out in the jean shorts and the shirt, and he rode an ATV down to the ring, and he did his signature thing. Who's to say Undertaker can't walk out in a suit, wave with everybody, go back, the gong rings, the lights go out, maybe to buy him some time, the Druids all come out and walk down to the ramp with their fire sticks and set up on the ramp, gives time for Taker to get into the gear. He then comes out, does the grand entrance, maybe goes out to the ring and does what he did at Survivor Series in the Thunderdome, but in front of everybody. So I'm saying for anybody who never saw Undertaker live, I would argue 38's your last shot. Whether he works in a surprise fashion, like I said, a chicken shit heel, just doing an open challenge, and he just does a quick surprise 3-minute match that's never advertised, and it just happens, and it's just there. You're like, oh shit, like, oh, I'm getting Undertaker now. It just happens. And like the grown dad who goes to the bathroom thinking that he's got a quick minute, all of a sudden he's in the bathroom, he hears the gong ringing, and now he's sprinting back to his seat. Like that sort of surprise thing. It's either going to be a complete surprise or it's advertised and it's going to be the last match. So like something against AJ Styles, or just some sort of Hall of Fame / my time has come to let Undertaker rest in peace again, sort of revisit. So that's how we got to Mania 38. I was saying I would argue for anybody who never got to see Undertaker live. And that's why I try to stay grateful and just always look at the glass half full and just be very, very appreciative and blessed for the experiences I had of seeing Taker live in all the different ways I saw him live. Yes. So just that's all I'm saying. Bottom line, for anybody who never saw him, go to Dallas. Yes. Go to Dallas.
I agree. I almost went to WrestleMania 36 before it was canceled. So I know
I was going to go there too.
I know the pain. I saw him at a house show when back in '99, Owen Hart's last match I was there for.
No shit.
Yes. I was there for Owen Hart's last match. I saw The Undertaker in a 6-man tag. And it was a great house show. I've tried many times to see Undertaker in the past, much like your story, I'm thinking he's going to be there. He's not.
You there. And I have pretty much the same story. Am I mistaken? Did you just say your first time you saw Undertaker was at a house show in a 6-man tag?
Yes.
That's exactly what happened with me, dude. A house show in a 6-man tag.
In the Allstate Arena. So yeah.
Wait, so who was do you remember who was all in the match?
Yes, actually I did a podcast episode and I went back to actually refresh my memory who was in the match. It is Undertaker, Triple H, and I think it was the Big Boss Man versus Rock, Stone Cold, and I think it's Kane. So yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. Great 6-man tag. Last night with Owen Hart. We ordered Over the Edge over the weekend. Saw The Undertaker win the title, of course, with all the other stuff happening, but you're a 6.5-year-old, almost 7-year-old, you're not worried about that. You're just waiting for your guy to come back, to come on.
Wow. And that's where our story changes, because for you see him at the house show, and then that weekend you see him win the title. For me, I see him at my first house show the last time he's ever the champion, and then that weekend he loses it. So that's almost like a complete inverse there. But and my main event for my house show was Undertaker, Edge, and John Cena against Batista, Randy Orton, and Sheamus.
Yes, and started just like the other one I saw.
Sheamus was the Sheamus was the was it Sheamus? Sheamus was the champion, yes. Because Sheamus carried the championship into Elimination Chamber, and then Cena won it, and then Vince walked out and re-pulled the New Year's resolution or revolution crap, and went, "Congratulations, Cena, you're going to WrestleMania! As long as you can beat this man." And then Batista obviously took it. But so Sheamus
I can't do a Vince like you. I love your Vince. I can't do a Vince like you.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. He's gonna huge. Anyway,
this is good stuff. That's
probably what he was saying to. That's probably what he was saying to Jeff Hardy when he called him to release him. Sorry, too soon.
This is very timely, ladies and gentlemen, very timely.
Too soon. I jest. Anybody who got offended by that, I'm sorry. But anyway, fuck that. Now we are getting off topic. But no. So Sheamus was WWE champion in that match, and Undertaker was the world champion. And I remember because, like you said, you had been trying to see him. However many times you'd been trying to see him. I've been trying to see him. Third time's the charm was for me. And so that first house show in Dubuque, I didn't see him. Second time I tried to see him was the last ever Judgment Day, which was at the Allstate Arena in 2009.
Which was a fair assumption. He was always there, basically.
For the most part, yeah, he was always there. And especially, in those last 2-3 years, especially 06, 07, 08, he was consistently on the show. So I thought it was going to be him in the main event against Edge for the World Championship. And I guess we're not off topic after all, because it was Jeff Hardy who was in the main event.
We come full circle. And we come full circle. I never get off topic, do I? But no, and that was actually a very nice main event with Jeff Hardy and Edge, because for expecting to see Undertaker and Edge continue that story. And I don't know why, as the young kid who didn't know anything about the business side of wrestling, I walked into Judgment Day expecting to see Edge and Undertaker, even though my t-shirt had Orton and Batista and then Hardy and Edge. I'm still walking in like, nah, Taker's going to be here. But everything comes good. You see the Undertaker at a house show. You see him in the 6-man tag. So everything's rectified. So,
and I think the most special thing for me too, and I think the reason why it worked out that way was because when you look at my first house show, Batista and Edge are in the main event together, and Edge has the world championship on his waist. When you go to Judgment Day, Batista and Edge are on the card, but they're in different matches. And once again, Edge has the world heavyweight championship. For me, growing up, Undertaker, Edge, and Batista were the 3 most prominent wrestlers for me growing up. And their story over the World Heavyweight Championship, because the man obviously makes the title. And back then, you thought that championship was made out of solid gold. I think any kid thought the World Heavyweight Championship was like the golden ticket. It was like, if you were in the building with it, you were you were just shocked. You were just bewildered and awed by its beauty. You just loved it. And you don't feel that way about today's WWE Championship. But back then, the prestige of that belt and Edge's heel work with how desperate he was to have it, made you feel like how important it was. He made you think he couldn't breathe without it. Batista made you think he couldn't breathe without it, because when Edge had that injury and gave it up, and they do the epic 20-man battle royal that ends with Great Khali holding the belt upside down, whoa, like that. You see Batista kicking the shit out of the steel steps and screaming, in frustration that he didn't win the belt. And, and Undertaker, how desperate he was to get the belt, and the story culminating by the end of 2007 with all 3 of them in the triple threat at Armageddon. And then you see the introduction of the Edgeheads. And of course, the story continues on between the World Heavyweight Championship between Undertaker and Edge. But the story between the 3 of them, I would argue, culminates at Armageddon, because that's when Batista kind of scurries on to whatever he's doing. Because by Mania 24, he's fighting Umaga in a SmackDown versus Raw match. By SummerSlam, he's working with Cena in that iconic match where Cena, hurts his neck. And just shy of a year after that, he turns into that heel, yelling at Ray, "You're supposed to be my friend!" And then goes into that WWE Championship
match with Undertaker, the Fatal 4. Undertaker's
right over the World Championship. So I guess that's the last time you see him, working with Taker in that sense over the World Championship.
No, you get Batista at TLC at the end of 2009 in that chairs match for the title. Undertaker defends his title against Batista.
Yes, because I was trying in my head. I was like, as I was saying all this to you in my head, I was like, wasn't there a SmackDown where Taker was walking to the ring with the belt on, wearing his Lord of Darkness gear, and Batista just beat the shit out of him with a chair? I was like, I remember that. So you're right. Yeah, TLC 09. Okay, I stand corrected. TLC 09 was where Batista kind of bowed out. But I mean, I would still really say, because in 08, the story continues with just Edge and Taker. And then in 09, it continues with just Batista and Taker. But you never get back to the three of them again.
Not until your 6-man tag.
But even then, Batista was on the opposite side, and that wasn't contended for the world championship. So I still, in a way, I'm still kind of right. I still feel like the last time the three of them come together in that triangle over the world championship was the Armageddon match.
Agreed.
But so I think for me, kind of going full circle, with my first attempt at that house show, and it was just Batista and Edge there, then Judgment Day, and it's just Batista and Edge there. When I finally see Undertaker, all three of them are involved in this match together. And now Undertaker's the one wearing the belt. And it's the last time he ever holds it. So I just feel like, again, just kind of talking about like things being written in the stars, or see, it was my destiny, that sort of thing. I feel like it was,
you just need an excuse.
Yeah, I was destined to see. That was supposed to be the first time I saw Taker live, because that was the first time all three of them were together live for me. And so I think, just being a part of that, the finish of that match where, Taker's going for the double choke slam on Orton and Sheamus, and Batista runs in with the spear. And then Cena gets up and does his, signature 5 moves of doom on Batista. Batista rolls out of the ring. Cena turns around, gets nailed with a brogue kick by Sheamus. Cena rolls out. Sheamus turns around into a spear by Edge. Sheamus rolls out. Edge turns into an RKO by Orton, and Edge rolls out. And then Taker sits up, gets directly behind Orton. Orton, just senses something's behind him.
Another
turns
old
around,
rival.
bam, gets picked up. Tombstone, Mike Chioda right there with the 1, 2, 3. But like that pop got louder and louder and louder with every finish that was hit.
It's like,
it was hit within 30 seconds of each other. So it was like, or like 30 seconds all day, but like each move was like maybe 5 seconds apart from each other. So like when Cena hit that AA and we all pop, then there's the bro kick and we're like, oh, and then there's the spear and we're like, oh, and then there's the RKO and we're like, whoa.
Aside from Sheamus, it's a match full of Undertaker old rivals of his. You get almost everybody in there. You get Orton, you get Edge, you get Batista, you get Cena. It's a match of Undertaker's rivals.
You see, I never thought about that.
Aside from Sheamus.
Now, would you really count Cena as a rival of Taker's? Because they never had like
03, it's a rivalry.
But it was like the Thugonomics Cena, so like did hustle, loyalty, respect, Cena and Taker ever clash like that in a rivalry sort of sense, like in the way that Edge
it's a person he has fought in the past, so I count it.
True, definitely, and that's a very insightful point, because I never thought of that. I never even really saw that before.
And you said,
I definitely agree with you. I'm just saying I don't know if I hold hustle, loyalty, and respect Cena in the same regard in terms of rivalry that I would with Orton and Batista and Edge. But you're absolutely right on that. That it was him interacting with all of his past.
Yeah, all his past, and then you said he pins Orton, so it comes full circle from 2005 again.
Yeah, hits him with the tombstone, kind of revisits WrestleMania 21.
Yes.
Hey, see how that number comes back?
Yeah, your number.
See how that number comes back? My first time seeing Taker live, he recreates the ending of WrestleMania 21 with Orton.
Look at that.
Look at us fucking discovering shit for the first time as we unpack this.
Right.
And that was actually the show where I got this pendant. You remember that? You remember that hour-long? And again, don't call me out or even accuse me for going off topic here. I'm not. I have a point here. You remember that? Hear me out. I have a point. You remember that documentary they did that was an hour long called Once in a Lifetime, that was centered around Rock and Cena's Mania match? And it was telling you their story, like their humble beginnings.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
How they got into wrestling. So you know how there's a part of it where they show you Cena's work ethic, and they show you, all the time he spends in the gym. They show you all the time he spends getting, ready for the shows and doing all the press stuff. And then they show you him getting to the building for a house show, and he goes into one of those, office rooms, excuse me, and they do a time lapse of him signing maybe 2,000 of those 8x10s.
Oh yeah.
That they sell at the house shows. And obviously, even in today's wrestling shows, when you go and you see at the counters at Allstate Arena, if it's a house show, even if it's Raw, they do have Roman Reigns 8x10s, and they have AJ Styles 8x10s that are signed. And so I can easily, going off my past, buy that those are actually signed by them. Because we have the time lapse video that shows Cena was literally, for all those house shows, standing there and signing every single one of those. And so why am I bringing that up? Because you didn't know in 2010, you didn't know when you bought one of those that he really did sign it. You just had to kind of go on their word.
Of course.
But then 2 years later, when you see this documentary and he's wearing the orange shirt, and that footage was filmed in 2010, and you see the same picture,
and then you're like, oh my
frame, and you see him signing it in the same spot, you're just like, he really was signing those things. And so it's just like, it just blows your mind. And so I remember at my first house show, when we got there late too, because we were doing something at my middle school. It was like a dance-a-thon thing or whatever. And we left late to get to the Allstate Arena. And we got there right before intermission started. And Justin Roberts got on the mic, and he was talking about all the different things you could find at the merch stand. And then he announced that Cena had signed about 2,000 of those 8x10s, and they were scattered at several of the different merch stands in the halls. And I remember just grabbing my mom by her arm, and I'm like, we're getting one of those. And so we ran to one of the stands, and we got one of the last 2 or 3 that they had. And as we got that, and I still have it, it's up in my attic, we got this Undertaker pendant. And so to this day, I had it. And so we got it at Allstate Arena the first, on the night I saw him live for the first time. So anytime I went to a WrestleMania, or anytime I went to even Night of Champions 2010, just to bring that up again, to see Undertaker fight Kane for the world title, I was wearing this. Or even, and we'll talk about WrestleMania 34 a little bit later on, but when you see me in those documentaries, you can see.
Don't give that away yet.
It's already common knowledge if you follow me on Instagram. So I'm not giving anything away that's not already common knowledge. I won't say anything more than, if you've seen that, then you know that I'm wearing this and that too. So this pendant alone has just had a lot of prestige for me throughout the entire time that I've been a fan of his, because I guess, the first time I saw him live was 2010. And if this year becomes the last time we see him live in any way, then it becomes a 12-year story that I had with him. And from the first time I saw him live, it was really a 15-year story if you're starting in 2007. But the first 3 years, were strictly TV. So, seeing him live and being a part of the aura and the experience that is him, it's a 12-year story. And so it's cool that for every single one of those shows, this was not only, there in the building with me, but it was around my neck. And so I just have a lot of regard for this piece. And that's why I want to make sure I had it for this podcast.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. I love it. I love stories like that. You pick up something, and then it just becomes a whole part of your life, and it becomes a whole part of attending events. And something else that I wanted to touch on before we get into WrestleMania 25 and talking a little bit about your experiences at other WrestleManias.
Yeah, because we're doing pretty good. I've been looking at my clock tonight. I've been actually paying attention to my clock tonight to see where we've been on the ball time wise. And we're only about an hour in so far, so we're doing pretty good.
So the one thing that on another experience that we share is another thing I wanted to touch on before getting into the WrestleManias is actually meeting the Undertaker in person.
Yes.
Meeting him at a signing. And being, just given just a brief opportunity to talk to him. I know.
How about you start then? What was your experience like? So was the show that you and I went to, was that your only time that you met him, or did you meet him before that?
Actually, yes, I did meet him beforehand. I met him at a Wizard World Comic-Con in Roselle. So the same location that we saw him at that sports spectacular. And
The Donald D. Stevens Convention Center.
yes,
Got you.
Stevens Convention Center in Roselle.
Rosemont.
Rosemont. Why did I say Roselle?
You said Roselle the first time, and I let it go because I was like, I'm pretty sure he said Rosemont, and maybe I just heard Roselle and I just let it go. But then you said it again. I'm like, no, dude, Rosemont.
Yes, definitely Rosemont. Yeah, Wizard World 2015, the weekend of SummerSlam 2015. That was my first chance to meet him, get my photo taken with him, get something signed, and just a great experience. I know I talked about it on a podcast episode, but you're just given the brief time to talk to him, say how much you're a fan, say how long you've been a fan, how much you appreciate him and everything like that. But going there, I wanted to, do something different than what he's used to. So I made sure to give him like a little a figurine. So I made sure to give him like a little figurine. So, and he was like so appreciative of it. And he made like a quick joke saying, he's because that Sunday he was fighting Lesnar and he had I gave him like a thumb wrestler. He says he'll make sure to use this in the match, bring him good luck. I just thought it was like fun, it's just like he's making like a little joke and a little thing of something I gave him. So it was just like, you got that.
You gave him a little you gave him a toy wrestler or
Yeah, little thumb wrestler.
oh like a thumb puppet?
Yeah, thumb puppet of the Undertaker.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude. So what did you tell him when you met him? It's like, what was your experience?
I told him, I've been a fan at that time. It was like 18 years. I told him I've been a fan ever since like 1998. First time I saw him, and I've been a fan ever since. I appreciate him and everything he's done, and I hope to see him again. And I said, this is something I wanted to give you. And he was making small conversation with me the whole time. So it felt like a couple minutes, but I think it was only like maybe 30 seconds I was talking with him. But it was just like the conversation just flowed, and it just was like he was really appreciative, like hearing from me and hearing that how much of a fan I am, and how appreciative I am of his work. And I think it's no matter which wrestler you meet, that's always something it's something you should tell them. If you're a fan of them, tell them how much you appreciate them and how much you're a fan of them, because a lot of times they may only hear criticisms from people. So to hear from a fan of how much you appreciate them, especially Undertaker, who's been there for like 30 years, it's makes the experience a good one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that was a big focal point for me, because the show that you and I were at the same time was not the first time I met him either. I met him a year prior. So both times I met him was the weekend of Survivor Series, which I think is very fitting.
That is very fitting.
Obviously the pay-per-view that he debuted at, but also the pay-per-view that he said goodbye at. So I think it was very fitting that the weekend of Survivor Series was when I was seeing him. And I got to give Wrestle Talk News and Ali Davis credit for it, because they were the reason why I even knew it was a thing. I used to watch their news reports like religiously back then. And that morning I had to get up, because that morning I was working at a serving job somewhere. I had to get up for the morning shift. And I remember as I was getting dressed, I was watching that day's Wrestle Talk News. And it ended with Holly Davis going, "It's been reported that The Undertaker will be doing a very limited meet and greet for the first time in over 15 years. And I lost my shit. I was like, where? And I found out that it was going to be in Los Angeles. And without even thinking about it, I bought the fucking tickets. And then I was like, I'll figure the rest of it out later. I'll figure out my flights, my hotel, all that shit. I'll figure it out later. Only thing I was caring about was getting the meet and greet locked, and I did. Obviously got everything else figured out as time went on. When I went to that though, it was cool because I brought in a Ziploc bag, and it's still in the same Ziploc bag, and it's up in my attic again. I brought the only physical copy picture that exists of me from Halloween of 2007 when I went as the Undertaker. And if you've seen that picture, it's on my Instagram, but it's on a couple different posts.
Yes, I have.
You've seen the picture of me, doing the like iconic pose. I still have that shirt. I still have the foam Jack Specific big gold world belt that I bought at that Spirit Halloween, or that my mom, I should say, bought. And she didn't even know who that was. I remember telling her I wanted to go as Undertaker. She's like, "You want to go as who? What?" And so that was like her, introduction to Undertaker. She's like, all right, like, that's what you want, and she's, bless her heart, she's always been very supportive of like what I wanted to do or what I wanted to see, even if she didn't understand it. So, I've always been very appreciative of that. And so it was so cool. And she was a big reason why even that meet and greet even happened, because she flew out with me to go, make sure it happened and to make sure I got to meet him. And, she was, because I wasn't old enough to rent a car at the time. So she like went out there with me to actually get the rental car and actually drive, me around LA and, actually get me to and from the appearance and stuff. So a lot of that happened literally because of her. So I'll never forget, I get up to him, they let me through the curtain, and I get in the little room that they have sectioned off for him, and he's sitting on a stool. Him sitting on a stool, he's still taller than me. Like, it was like, I remember that.
I remember going into to get the photo, and he is huge. And I was like, oh my God.
And when I saw him, and obviously, as you know, from the 2019 meet and greet at the Sports Spectacular, he was standing for that one.
Yeah.
And we learned later on from the Last Ride documentary that him standing in one place, like, it caused him a lot of pain. Like, you can't do that. So the fact that he was probably standing there for like a solid 2 hours or so in place, in probably a lot of pain, and you had no idea, because like I had no fucking idea when I met him and when I talked to him, he was super kind, super friendly, super awesome, cracked jokes with me too when we did our little face off, like our little iconic picture where I'm holding the belt in between us and we're doing our little holding up our fists face off. I would imagine he was in pain because he was standing in one place for a long time. And so, and the fact that he would have had no idea, and the fact that I had no idea, is just a testament to who he is, not only as just a person, but just as a man.
Yeah.
Like not even Undertaker. I'm talking Mark. I'm talking fucking Mark Calloway. Mean Mark Callis. I'm talking about Mark Calloway. Like that man is a man's man. He's just someone to just beyond respect. Yes. And so, when I met him for the first time in that room, and he's sitting on the stool, and he just, puts his, beef of a hand out, and just says, dude, his hands are huge.
It's
so huge. When he puts his hand out, he just goes, "How's it going?" In his Texas accent, it's just like, you're sitting there like, this is Undertaker? Like, you're just a big ass teddy bear. And I remember I handed him the picture in the Ziploc bag, and you can see him in one of the pictures, because the guy, bless that dude's heart. I wish I had thanked him, because I didn't know until after I left the room and was given back my device. Because obviously, as you know, in those meet and greets, when it's not a professional photograph, they expect you to give them the device. And so you hand off your device to some third-party schmuck who's just standing there in a black shirt, you know what I mean, who like just takes the pictures. So I didn't know that he was consistently clicking the shutter and taking pictures of the whole experience. So he took a picture of me and Undertaker shaking hands for the first time and making eye contact for the first time. He takes a picture of me handing the photograph to Taker. He then takes a picture of Taker looking at the photo, and you can see the little soft smile on Taker's face, like from seeing me as a little kid being him. And then he takes the obvious picture of, Taker holding my, winged eagle belt on his shoulder, and, me and him with the handshake. But that dude took like 5 or 6 different pictures of the moment of me meeting him. And so it was, and that was something that's something you don't even plan for, or like you can't even expect. It's just, again, something that's written in the stars. When you hope an event goes really well, and then it goes better than you even expected. Like that's like some universal shit. And so the fact that I walked away expecting to just have one picture on my tablet when it was given back to me, that being the picture of me and Taker. Come to find out, I'm scrolling through and I have 5 or 6 pictures, and each one is more special than the last, and each one tells a different story. And in each one, you can see like, oh, here's the moment we met. Oh, here's the moment I'm handing him the photo. Oh, here's the moment you can see on an emotional and a mental and like spiritual level, it not hitting Undertaker, but it hitting Mark the Man. Like, I inspired generations of people. And so you can see in his little soft smile and as he's looking at my photo, like, you can see what it meant to him. Like, just talking about how, you know, how appreciative he was of you giving him the thumb puppet. Like, you don't fake that appreciation. You could see in his smile when he was looking at my picture, like, he loved that. And so the fact that I have a picture of him looking at the picture, like the fact that I like a picture of a picture, picception for fuck's sakes. The fact that I have a picture of Undertaker looking at that picture is just, I think to me that's even more special than the picture of me and him posed looking in the camera with him wearing my belt and us shaking hands. I honestly think the picture of me standing there holding the belt, watching him look at the picture while he's smiling at it, I honestly think that one's more important. And his reaction, like, he looked at the picture, looked at the guys who were standing in the room with me, the security, looked at me and went, "Now you grew up." He was like, "You're a big boy now." And it was just like, it was so cool because like he has that obvious like intimidating presence about him because he's huge and he's the Undertaker, but it's so humbling like when you talk to him and you just see like how human he is and how kind he is. Like, he immediately makes you calm and makes you like not nervous anymore, and you're like, oh, like, this is who you are, like, this is really cool. And I know you can attest to that because you obviously met him live. So what was your experience at the 2019 one? Because I know you said you have a memory of like seeing me.
Yes, I do.
Show, but I didn't see you, obviously, and I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I remember I was waiting in the line for the photos. I saw you waiting in line as well. You were holding your infamous chair of signatures, as I know that you have posted. Holding your championship belt. And when I eventually got my photo and everything, like you said, he was standing, and I can only imagine for how long when I got there.
At least 2 hours with that line. I'd imagine they had at least he was sitting, you know, at a low level chair at a table when he did the signing.
Yes.
You know, that was in the corner of that room. But he's still standing for hours for that photo op. And I imagine that had a toll on him.
And I remember when I finally got to the signing, I had him sign this awesome print that we got at the Wizard World. It's a print of all his all his evolutions and everything. So he was signing it, and then I told him, you know, you may not remember, but a couple years ago I met you at Wizard World and I gave you a little thumb puppet. So I wanted to keep up the tradition and give you something else. So I gave him like a little mini Funko of himself. And
a mini Funko?
Yeah, it's like a little mystery mini that WWE had out. And it's like a little Funko of him. And so he takes a look at it and he goes and he says, I think I remember you giving me the thumb puppet. And then he says, he said, I really appreciate you giving me this. He said, thanks so much, buddy. And he puts it in his pocket. And it's just like another memory, you know, I just keeping up the tradition of giving him something, you know. I told him, I've been a fan for now it was like 20 years. And he says, wow, am I that old? It's like he's just cracking jokes. And
I would imagine that. And I would imagine he definitely still has those gifts too, because if you watch the Last Ride documentary, he even pulls out the gavel that Xavier Woods got him.
Yeah.
And he talks about how much that meant to him and that he still has it. So I would imagine he definitely still has the stuff that you gave him and all the other fans gave him. And what's cool is like, even going back to the freaking Sun signing, and it's on video footage, you can see it on my Instagram feed, when he signed my belt and then I move up to like actually be in front of him. and I'm filming him in front of me, and he's signing my 3-disc set because I bought the set. You remember back in 2009 on WWE Shop, they had the Undertaker's Deadliest Matches 3-disc set combo that also had that iconic T-shirt.
Yes.
Which matched the logo that was on, or the design that was on the DVD. That was a sick design with like the side eye roll like shot that took up the whole shirt in deep purple. And on the back, you had a blown up symbol on the back. I still have that shirt. That was the shirt I was wearing when I met him for the first time. It was also the shirt I was wearing when I met him the second time at the Sports Spectacular. And it was like one of those legit, like back then they had the like authentic wear sewn on the side.
Yes.
Talking about, yeah. So that shirt, I still have it, and I still have the 3-disc set. Of course, obviously I do because I got it signed.
Of course.
But like I remember buying that set when it was a thing on WWE Shop and having it sent to my house like through UPS and like getting it like in one of those like bubble wrap, manila envelopes, and opening up the package and having, the combo, the DVD and the shirt. And I had the DVD all those years later because that came out in 2009, so 9 years removed. And I'm meeting him, and he signs the front of the cover in a really cool diagonal way with a purple paint marker. And there's still pictures of like how it looks on the DVD cover. Excuse me. And it was just so cool because like as he was signing it, I said to him, I was saying it to him, but I was looking at the security guard who was next to him because he was looking at me. And I'm looking at the security guard, and I say to him about Undertaker while pointing at Taker, this guy's been a part of my life literally for my entire life, and I truly hope it's for many, many more years to come. I say that to him, and Taker finishes signing the DVD, and you can see it in the footage. It's still on my Instagram. He slides the DVD over to me, looks up at me in my eye, not at the camera, looks at me and says, "Thank you, I appreciate it, man, thank you." Then looks back down at everything and just gets back to work. If you watch the Frank & Sons videos of Ric Flair, he doesn't look up at anybody for shit. Now, when I met him at World of Wheels, he was very kind to me, and he listened to what I had to say to him, and he not only shook hands with me, but he gave me a woo, which I didn't even ask for. And if you go back and look at the footage, when the guy takes our photo, he just gave me a woo. And he only did that for like maybe 3 or 4 other people that day. And so I'm very grateful for that. And that's, once again, something just written in the stars, working out better than you even envisioned it happening. Because I went there just hoping to meet Rick and get him signed on the chair. And he ended up being the 16th signature on my chair. That's just another, way of the numbers working out, and I always found that to be really special, that he was number 16 on the chair.
Is Undertaker number 21?
No, Ric Flair. No, Taker was before Rick. Taker was right before Rick. He was 15. Taker was 15. I don't think there's even 21 on the chair as of today. I think there's only 19. Or no, so Ric Flair was 16. I think Bret Hart was the one I got after him at Warrior Wrestling. That was 17. But then I got Hornswoggle, Simon Gotch, and Aiden English all at the Zello Pro show that was here in Chicago not that long ago. So 20. So whoever I get next will be number 21. Nice. So I got to really watch my P's and Q's, and I got to make sure I get somebody special. He just helped me realize that the next one's going to be 21. But anyway, I don't want to get off topic. Ric Flair being number 16 was something really special for me. And just like, again, that's something working out better than you even envision. And so for me, I just show up to World of Wheels thinking I'm going to just meet Ric Flair and get number 16 signed on the chair. Then I also get a woo. So like, you can't even ask for that. That just happens. So, with the Frank & Son signing, and you're meeting Undertaker, and he hands you the DVD and he looks up at you and thanks you. Like I'm saying, you go back and look at the Frank & Sons footage of Ric Flair. He just signed everything in like a factory line, didn't look up at anybody once. And then the video footage, people are like, the guy who filmed him is like asking him a question and thanking him for all this stuff. And Rick is just, again, tongue out, just signing the shit the way he does and just not acknowledging anybody. And of course, he could have been in a bad mood or something, could have just been a bad day. when I met AJ Styles at World of Wheels in 2019, he was not in a great mood that day. And so you could just argue everybody just has off days. And that could have been the case in that video footage. But I still recognize that Undertaker, went out of his way to not only be there for that signing, but to look up at me in the eye and thank me for my, words of support and for being that fan. And as someone who's met him and has seen that appreciation, how real that is.
And it's something I saw, when I was waiting in that line. It's something I saw him do to everybody. He always made that point to make eye contact with the person he's talking to. Because you're giving Undertaker respect, so he's giving that respect back to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think he knows for a lot of people, it's people that have been there for decades, like in the arenas with him for decades. And so
and as he said in the Last Fight documentary and all the other documentaries, he appreciates the fans who spend their hard-earned money to come see him. And
I was just gonna say
that just doesn't mean, at live events, that means spending money to buy a ticket to get stuff signed and to actually come out and meet him. That's all what he meant. Whether you're spending your money to see him fight or to see him at a signing, you're still spending money to see him.
Exactly. Yeah. And you actually really touched on a very prominent point there, because there's a guy from Ring of Honor named Prolific Moses, who's really good. You should follow him on Instagram. He's good. He cut some great promos. He posted on his story today a segment from an interview he did, and he was talking about how he knows as a fan what it's like to buy a ticket for a show. And he even took it even further, and he did something I didn't even think about. And I don't know if you think about this too, but he says it goes even further than that. You didn't just buy a ticket to see me. You may have had to pay for a babysitter to come out to get to the venue to see me. You may have had to pay for your parking. You may have gone out for drinks beforehand, or bought a dinner beforehand. You may have gone out and bought my t-shirt in the stands. Like, you spent money on money to see me. And that really sat with me when I heard him say that in his interview clip earlier today. And I really reflected on that, and that, those are the people that I really love to support. And I mean, I'll support pretty much anybody in the wrestling business as long as they're not, Velveteen Dream. But I'm just fucking around. But I pretty much will support pretty much anybody in the wrestling business. But I really, really love to support the people in the wrestling business that not only truly appreciate, the support that they get, but they show it, not only in their interviews, but just in the way they carry themselves. You can just tell with certain wrestlers, they live and breathe through their fans, not through the matches they have. They live and breathe through the fans that they earn through their matches. And those are the people that I really love to fucking, be behind.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect segue. Before we start the watch along, I know there is something you wanted to promote. So I think by you saying that you like to support wrestling and wrestling shows that really speak to you, what is the wrestling show that you wanted to promote?
Oh yeah, talking about tomorrow night, the upcoming Mission Pro show. Yes. Before we do that, I just want to put a period on the meet and greet that we saw together, because I talked about the Frankensons one. I didn't really put a period on my interaction with him for the face-off. So I came up with the idea to do the face-off as I was maybe 5 people away from actually doing the photo op with him. And I just went with it. I'm like, fuck it. I already have a picture where we're posed and we're shaking hands. I might as well do one where we're promoting a match. And so I asked him.
I love the photo. I love the photo you took. It's amazing.
Thank you, man. And that was, to date at that time, that was my most liked picture. I got 1,200, 1,300 likes. Back then, that was big for me. I was like, holy shit. And I'm not trying to sound pompous or egotistical, but my account has obviously grown since then. But for that time period, that was that blew up my Instagram when I posted that picture. But anyway, so yeah, so and a lot of people there in person too, when they printed that picture and put it in the plastic sleeve and then gave it to me, when I was leaving the convention, a lot of people would see it over my shoulder and be like, that's a sick shot. And I remember this one guy specifically, look, he saw my photo, looked at his girlfriend, almost in tears, gave a face palm to himself and went, fuck, I should have fucking done that. And then walked off with his girl. Like, I remember that so like vividly. But so I got the idea to do it, and I go behind the curtain. It's my turn. I shake his hand. I wasn't expecting him to be standing, and then there he is standing. I thought he was going to be sitting again like the last time I met him. And I walk in, and he's there standing, and he shakes my hand. He goes, how's it going? I tell him that it wasn't the first time I met him, and that it was an honor to see him again. And he said it was a pleasure to see me again. He didn't specify that he did or did not remember me, but he just said it was nice to see me again. I asked if we could do like a pose, like a fighting pose, and like without even saying a word, he just went right into like Undertaker, and it made me so happy that I almost forgot I was supposed to not be smiling for the pose. So like I asked him to do it, and I just watch him go. And like just watching him get in that stance and like listen, like you could hear him like inhale through his nose, just that like, and like you could hear him go to that place for a second, and like he became Undertaker for a second. And I was so just like that, like the picture almost looked like him doing that, me holding the belt up, and then me just going, because I was so just starstruck and just happy. And then I finally realized, like, oh shit, a second before the guy clicked the camera that I can't be smiling. And so I dropped the smile at the last second, and I just like got into a straight face, and the picture came out. The only complaint I have is that my hat that I was wearing, it covers my eyes. So you can't see like me and him making direct eye contact with each other because my hat is blocking my eyes. But you can see him like staring through my soul as if he's coming for me, which I always love.
It's a great
shot. And he's wearing all black in that too. He's wearing the black snow hat, the black hoodie, the black pants. So like he really became Undertaker for a minute, and I loved it. Yeah. And then this was probably the most special part. As I'm walking away and my time is done, I shake his hand again and I thank him for the photo. And as I'm walking away, I turn around and I say to him, I was so excited about that I almost forgot that I'm not supposed to smile on a face-off photo. And I said that to him, and he just goes, he puts his hands on his waist and he just goes, rookies. And then just laughs at me. And I laughed like you are right now. I popped and I went, ha! And I just thanked him for that. And I went, it was a pleasure to see you again, man. Thank you. And he went, take it easy. And then turned around, shook the hand of the next guy and went, how's it going? And then I was gone. That was it. But I remember just saying to him, like, I almost forgot to not smile, dude, because I was so excited. He just went, rookies. Like, so I mean, you can attest to that. Like, he has fun with his fans, and it's awesome to see him. Like, after spending 30 years staying true to that character and keeping kayfabe and not having any social media and not being out in public, and even when he was out in public wearing all black, like he stayed truer than true to that. And so to see him in those last 2-3 years kind of blend more into Mark and kind of be more of himself, and not only be more of himself, but allow himself to be more of himself. I felt like that was a very refreshing treat for a lot of fans. So for people that, if anybody gets the opportunity to meet him today, like, I think he's going to be the most Mark Calloway of himself, like, that he's ever been, because he's obviously been spending the last, year, 2 years doing full-on interviews from his home as Mark in ways that we've never heard him talk before. So I'm sure if you and I got the opportunity to meet him again, he'd be even more Mark than he was when we met him the first 2 times.
And I will take that in a heartbeat. And like
in a heartbeat.
And like you said, for people to jump at the chance to go to Dallas, I say if anybody gets the chance to get any type of signing or meet and greet, jump at it. Jump at it.
Even if you have to fly across the country, because I had to for Frankensons.
Because
I had to go from Chicago to LA to be there.
You never know when's the last time you're going to able the chance to meet him. And you don't want to look back and have a regret that you didn't. Exactly.
And when I met him here in Chicago too, I remember my mom being like, but you met him already. And I was like, so what? It's the Undertaker. Yes. You don't know how many chances you get to have shit signed by him.
Before Wizard World, it never happened. It never happened.
Not at Wizard World, certainly not. No.
And no Comic-Cons did it happen. It only happened at WrestleMania Access, and that was limited.
Yes.
I
remember back then it was a bidding war on eBay. You either got them the day they went on sale, or you had to spend like $600, $700 on eBay. I remember that. Like those days were insane.
He did very limited access, and then once he did Wizard World, that was unheard of. So definitely take the chance.
And then Vince literally popped that balloon as soon as it started to inflate. Like he did Frankensons. He did that one other signing in between Frankensons. Then he did our Chicago Sports Spectacular. And he did like one other con after that. And then Vince re-signed into a Legends deal.
Yeah.
And then he was done. And Vince, like, part of that deal literally barred him from doing those. And I would imagine, excuse me, sorry, my chest has been acting up lately.
You okay?
I would imagine, yeah, no, I'm good, dude. Just it's just been acting up lately, but I'm good. I would imagine that shit, I lost my I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there because of my chest. What was I saying?
Vince signing him to a Legends contract.
Yes, I would imagine that moving forward, even past Mania 38, like I would imagine whatever he's got Taker signed on to is going to kind of bar him from doing any of those outside events unless they're specifically approved.
Yeah.
Does that mean we could potentially, because, you know, in years past, you had, when you knew who the first ballot Hall of Fame inductee was, they usually are a signee at Mania Access. Like when Shawn went in the Hall of Fame,
that's something
he was an Access signee. Edge was an Access signee the year thereafter for 2012 as a Hall of Fame inductee because we knew he was first ballot. Kevin Nash did it too when he was first ballot. Sting did it when he was first ballot. So if they announce Undertaker this year as the first ballot Hall of Fame inductee, there's a legitimate chance that people could get an Access ticket to meet him because they could make him an Access person. They really could.
Yeah.
Because they could do him for if they do all of his shit. Let's say we get an actual in-person Hall of Fame, you know, COVID permitting. That's obviously going to be on Thursday because Friday is SmackDown, which is going to go up against Rampage. And I think that's very interesting. I'm not going off. I kind of am, but this needs to be said. This is the first year that AEW is legitimately going to compete in the same town against WrestleMania because 2020, they weren't, you know, it wasn't like really around and COVID prevented them from doing, you know, those events. And so they weren't in town against Tampa for WrestleMania. Then you go to WrestleMania 37, WWE got permission to go do a half capacity show in Tampa, but nobody else was around. There wasn't WrestleCon, there wasn't Ring of Honor, there wasn't New Japan, there wasn't like all those wrestling companies that come into town for WrestleMania weekend. So this year coming up, you're going to have a Rampage in Dallas going up against SmackDown. Like, I would imagine Tony Khan's going to put on some Saturday night, like, clusterfuck show at a nearby stadium that's going to go up against WrestleMania. Like, this year's going to be very interesting. You're going to have CM Punk in town when WrestleMania happens, going up against WrestleMania for the first time in how long? So, like, I think it's a very crazy time for wrestling fans because as you're seeing the end of what you knew to be wrestling, this whole new wave is coming up that's kind of changing the game for the better. And so I'm excited to see how that WrestleMania weekend pans out because I'm someone who thinks right now, so my birthday's March 30th and I'm flying into San Antonio that night. And then I'm going to go to Dallas the next day. I'm going to San Antonio for something else, like for my actual birthday. And then I'm going to go to Dallas for the actual show and for the actual weekend. I would imagine they're going to start, if we get traditional access, it's going to start on Thursday and we'll have Hall of Fame that night. And then on Friday, you have SmackDown going up against Rampage and then WrestleMania on Saturday going up probably against something AEW themed on that Saturday. Then you have Sunday's WrestleMania and then a Monday Night Raw. So like, that whole weekend is just for a wrestling fan, it's going to be a clusterfuck of like, there's gonna be 4 or 5 different shows and events going on at the same time, and you physically cannot be at all of them. So like as a wrestling fan, you're gonna have to make some real tough choices. And that's exciting for me. Like to have an almost unlimited supply of things you can do. Do I go to Access? Do I go to Con? Do I go to Rampage? Do I go to SmackDown? Do I go to the Hall of Fame? Do I go to WrestleMania? Do I go to NXT? Do I go to Impact? Do I go to New Japan? Like there's gonna be a plethora of things to do. It's not just going to be about WWE taking over the town. It's going to be wrestling taking over the town now. And I just think that's a very exciting thing to think about.
Yeah.
But going into promoting the show you want me to promote now, Mission Pro Wrestling is also staying on topic for Texas, because I would imagine, because they are based out in Texas, I would imagine they're going to also stake their claim in being around for WrestleMania weekend. It would only make sense because they do a lot of their shows out in Conroe, which is near Houston, but they do some of their shows in San Antonio as well. So I would imagine it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to go to Dallas for WrestleMania weekend and try to do something. But this Saturday is going to be their upcoming show, Silver Bells. And for anybody who's a fan of Thunder Rosa, her son Anakin Rosa is going to be tag teaming with her mother in a mixed tag match in the main event of the show. There's going to be an iconic, like I'm calling it, it's going to be iconic fatal 4-way match that's going to open the show. There's going to be at least 6, maybe 7 women scramble to name the new #1 contender for the Mission Pro Wrestling Women's World Championship. There's going to be some really exciting matches all up and down that card. And I really, really, really think people should give Mission Pro Wrestling the attention that they deserve. They are available only on Title Match Network, so get yourself a subscription for I gotta be stone cold here, for $9.99. Get yourself a subscription to Title Match Network and get yourself there to watch Silver Bells by Mission Pro Wrestling tomorrow night. So that's the show I wanted to plug. That's gonna be some really good stuff.
And where can they find them? Can they find them on Twitter, on Instagram?
Yes, they can find them on YouTube. They can find them on Instagram. They can find them on Facebook. I don't know about Twitter because I've been locked out of Twitter for a bit. I've been trying to get back into my account because I was transferring phones and transferring storage from one phone to another, and I forgot my login info. And they do that weird thing where, like, if you don't know your login info, you have to like do a text verification. But I switched phones and I switched numbers, so like, kind of caught between a rock and a hard place trying to get back into my Twitter. So I don't know if they're on Twitter, but I know that they're on Instagram. I know they're on Facebook. I know they're on YouTube. But seriously, like, even if you follow Thunder Rosa and go on her feed, you can see like within like the first 3-4 photos, she'll be posting something that promotes Mission Pro. And you can just go to that picture, click on it. Mission Pro's tagged in it. You can click on that. It takes you right to their page. They got like 7,500 and some followers and counting. And they're on the rise, and I really hope that they get the attention that they deserve. So I really want to make sure that I shout that out. Like I said, it's going to be a really, really fun show. Hopefully you watch it as well tomorrow night. I know I'll be watching it.
Well, sounds like a fun show. Sounds like a great wrestling organization. And
it is a great organization.
Great. We'd like to hear that, and it's something you support. So I will definitely take a look into that. Because I appreciate your support for this podcast, so I will definitely look into that. And
I know that you already followed them too, so that's great.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
It's a great step.
So as we take a perfect segue now into the last part of this interview, which is the part 1 of our 4-part watch-along series.
That's right.
As we start WrestleMania 25.
Now you're actually getting something very special for me because I like to make this match as special as possible. Okay. And so for me, I'm a very, the Big Bang Theory?
Yes.
I'm very much like Sheldon Cooper. I'm not like a total like self-centered, annoying twit like he is, but I like to be, let's call a spade. He can be very, he can be very Sheldon. So I mean,
yes, of course.
I'm like him in the sense that I'm very, I do the same thing every day at the same time. Because it's almost like that joke he does in the season 3 finale. That's odd. The president of the university wants me to meet him in his office at 8. And Leonard goes, what for? And he goes, doesn't say. But that's odd. Everybody knows at the university that I move my bowels at 8 and have breakfast at 8:20. So just like the fact that he times everything down to the minute, that's me. Like I time everything like throughout my day in like a very like routine way. That's just how I like to live.
Oh, sure.
And so whether it's in the micro or in the macro, I will time when I watch this match because I like to like make it as special as possible. So I only watch it one time a year on my birthday. And I already did that once this year. So this is the second time this year I'm watching it again. I'm doing that for you.
Well, I appreciate that. And my listeners appreciate that as well. And it is a remarkable match. It sets the tone for the next 3 remarkable matches in a 4-part story, the greatest story ever told, WrestleMania. So are you ready?
I would argue that this story is why the streak became more important than the world championship.
I would agree.
Because right before that, the streak was a novel concept. Come Mania 21, that was the first time they were calling it the undefeated streak, not the streak, but the undefeated streak. And that was like one of the first times we're seeing those video packages. You go to 22, the stakes are not nearly as high. It's Mark Henry in a casket match. You go to Mania 23, it's the world championship, but he only got there because he won the Rumble. You know, it wasn't just based on, oh, well, I'm undefeated at WrestleMania, so I get a title shot. It was, he still earned it. Then you go to Mania 24, he earned it again. He earned it at the No Way Out pay-per-view in the Elimination Chamber match. So it was never like, I'm undefeated, therefore I get, you know what I mean? He was still earning everything. By Mania 25, that match obviously stole the show, and it wasn't over the title, and it was just over who's the better man of this near 20-year story between those two, because Shawn had never lost to Undertaker, but Undertaker had never lost at WrestleMania. So you were in like one of the grandest schemes of something has to give.
Mm-hmm.
And so that like was one of the coolest things for me. Like just Taker never lost at the show, but Shawn never lost to Taker. So like, but you can't move forward.
Gotta give.
Right. You can't move forward with both of those statements still holding true. Yes. One of those have to no longer be. And I think that's when wrestling gets the most exciting. When somebody has never lost the championship, but the person challenging the champion has never lost to them. Like, I think that is when wrestling gets the most exciting, because that's almost like when Vince or Tony will book themselves into a corner, because they'll book a match so exciting. It's like when it comes time to make a finish, you're like, well, I don't know what to do. It's so like, how do I get out of this with them still both being that? It's like, it just doesn't work that way. You have to make those decisions. And I think what's so cool about this story is that at no point is a championship on the line. This is strictly just about the streak, and about not even about the streak. It's about who's better.
It is.
And it's not even just about who's better. I think the best part about this story is that every year the story is told from the standpoint of how far will the challenger go to break the streak. But then for the first time come 27, we flip it entirely to what lengths will Taker go to keep it intact. And I thought that was a really profound and like deep way of looking at it, because for years it was just about, well, no, Taker is just this unbeatable dead guy. He's never even going to come close to losing. It's about how far are you going to go to beat him. And then you start making him look human, and you start taking Taker out to the deepest waters, and you start seeing him become vulnerable, and you're sitting there like, wait, like how far is he going to go? Wait, is he going to lose now? Like, I just thought that all made the streak what it then became by the time CM Punk was around.
Yeah. And as we will see in the next 3 parts, is with each match, the stakes are raised higher and higher. And
at no point is there a championship on the line. And as you said, the stakes get higher and higher. And that, I think, is what elevated the streak to what it became. It was more important than the championship easily by Mania 29.
Yeah. I agree. The next match, you get Shawn's career on the line. The following match, it's no holds barred. Then final match, it's Hell in a Cell. Its stakes are getting higher and higher. They're going all out. They want to see who's better. It's for the streak. It's for respect. It's for everything that all three men stand for, just to get a, just a leg up on the other. And
Yeah.
something's got to give. Someone's got to break. And as we do know, all 4 times the Undertaker is successful, and we get that iconic shot at the end of WrestleMania 28, which can't wait to get into that match and discuss that, all that symbolism, all the respect that all 3 men have shared through this whole 4 years. But of course, that's
Right.
here. Starts here.
Now, I have one question for you though before we hit play. Do you think that Mania 27 match would have been what it was had they not told the story they told? Now, what I mean by that is, again, up until Shawn losing, the story was told from the perspective of what is the challenger going to do to break the streak.
Okay.
They did, in a way, tell that story because they showed how far Triple H will go from a moral standpoint to try to break it. So, like, they still told that story, but it was mostly about, because from Shawn's standpoint, you have the iconic shot of him crawling up Taker's body as Taker's screaming at him to stay down. Then a year later, it's Triple H yelling at Taker to stay down and die as he's trying to get up. Mm-hmm. And so, do you think that Mania 27 match would have been what it was without them making that turn in the story? Because that was the first time the story was turned into Taker being human.
Probably not. If you're going to use imagery from other matches, it needs to be all connected. So if there's any kind of disconnect, then you lose something. But, if you have the mirror image, you have Shawn crawling up Taker and Taker yelling to stay down. Now Undertaker's in Shawn's position and Triple H is yelling to stay down. The story is progressing.
And that's why I love that Shawn is.
Then you're left with, okay, Undertaker just barely won. The next year, Triple H can beat him. You're left with that. Is that going to be the final chapter of the story? Is Undertaker, with every year, he's giving more and more of himself? Is the final one, is this, he just can't. So it's like you're left with that. You're left with another layer on that story, is Undertaker's ability to keep going and pulling out the win, which of course we saw the last one, he pulls out the win. And then the last one, you're flipped again. Undertaker couldn't stand at the end of 27, but at the end of 28, Triple H can't stand. So again,
I didn't even think about that too, like where Shawn and Taker had to help Triple H up. You make a great point there. What I was thinking more about is like, that's why I love what you said there. The reflection of the story there with Shawn crawling up Taker and then Taker trying to get up and Triple H being in Taker's position there. That's why I loved so much when you fast forward in the storytelling, you had Shawn become obsessed with trying to break the streak. And so you see him just go in this downward spiral. Taker does the same thing. And so it's once again reflecting that. Taker becomes desperate to get Triple H to agree to another match. And they made Triple H one of the biggest threats to break the streak of all time, I'd argue, by Mania 28, just by having Triple H say the words, "I know what I have to do to beat you. I have to finish you." And they showed you in that 27 match, he can finish him. Like in that 27 match, he dragged Taker to the center of the ring while holding the sledgehammer. And once again said, as he said on that Raw the night before or the week before in Chicago, which I wish I was there live for, but I missed that. That was the night in Chicago when he said to Taker in the promo, "Shawn and I made a pact when we were driving down the road that if either one of us ever got to a point in our career where we couldn't go anymore at the level that we did, we'd look him in the eye and we would tell him, it's time." And he told him right there, it's time. And Taker told him right back, if there's anybody who I'd ever want to put me down, it'd be you. That's how much respect I have for you. but it ain't that time. And so I love in that match when he kicks out of the tombstone and Triple H crawls away from him like in fear and then goes out to the ring and gets the sledgehammer. And you hear Jim Ross say, "Desperate times are certainly upon us." And you see Triple H drag Taker to the center and say, "It's time." As he's distracted by even just saying it's time, that's when Taker, pulls him in and chokes him out and literally escapes the match. But through all of that, just by Triple H saying, "I have to finish you," they made you think, like, he really could do it. Like, this is either going to be, it's either he's going to go 20-0 or he's going to go 19-1. And like, you really believe like it could happen, because in that 27 match, I don't think anybody thought Taker was going to kick out of that tombstone. Like, I remember, I did not think he was going to kick out. I thought the streak had ended. And as I said in that video package, if you watched it on that episode of Raw, they did it for both the 27 and the 28 matches. On Raw, right after it, they did this little like 3-minute recap where all of the top stars like Cena, Punk, even Rock, they all talk about that match. And Cena says something iconic about Mania 27. He says, to have a match that brutal, one of the guys didn't walk away, and it was the guy who won. And so just like, I loved that they put such a spotlight on Triple H being able to do it, because like Edge said so perfectly in that 3-minute recap about Mania 27, Triple H had you thinking it's going to end. And the way he said it like that, it's just like you thought when he hit that tombstone after those 3 pedigrees and that assault on the chair, you thought. And that was 2011, like that open chair shot to the head he did to Taker. And then the tombstone. You thought it was over. I remember thinking it was over. And when he kicked out, I lost it.
Yeah.
But just to put a period on all of that so we can get into this watch along, I just loved that reflection image, as we talked about, where they were kind of retelling the story over and over again. And then they made Triple H look that strong, like he could really break it by just saying, "I know what I have to do. I have to finish you." But then, as you brought up, in the 27 match, Taker can't stand. But then in 28, Triple H can't stand. Remember, 26, Shawn couldn't stand.
Yep.
So that was the one thing that all 3 of them experienced. Mm-hmm. In 26, Shawn couldn't stand. At 27, Taker couldn't stand. And Triple H got up and walked away on his own power. At 28, it was Triple H who couldn't stand. And it was Taker and Shawn who together, each taking one of his hands, pulled him up. Like, that right there is the Shakespearean art of wrestling, where you either get it or you don't. And the only other, difference that I love there is that all 4 years, the pyro goes off and the number rises. But there's only 1 year where, as the pyro goes off, and actually Mania 25, there was no pyro. For Mania 25, it was just 17-0, no pyro. It was 26 when they started doing the pyro for the streak going up. But every year, the number went up, and Taker would do the pose on his knee, except 27. 27's the 1 year where they still do the pyro and the number going up, but he never gets up.
That's right. And that's 3 matches that I cannot wait to get to. But it also,
so much symbolism, dude. So much story, so much symbolism. It's beautiful.
And it all starts here at WrestleMania 25. So are you ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. We are queued up at 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 35.
Wait, let me make sure I'm queued to the right second as you are. You're at 148, what?
34.
I am at 147.59. All right, hang on 1 second. It's playing right now on mute, so I'm just going to get it up to where you are.
No problem at all. We are on the Peacock network.
Yeah, I'm on the cock too, as Jim Cornette calls it. They're showing some NASCAR fuck right now, as if I care. Well, here we go. Here's Taker. Here's Shawn. Now, so because you have Peacock too, go and look at this too. If you hit pause on your WrestleMania menu and you look at the little orange circle that marks each match and the length of it, Taker and Shawn is at least half of the entire WrestleMania show length. Like when you look at that, they took up without question the most time of the whole show, as they deserved. Because if you remember the initial report, Vince had originally only given Taker and Shawn 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And Taker and Shawn looked at each other and just laughed like, okay. So, and they obviously took matters into their own hands as they needed to, and thank goodness they did. I am now at 148.29. 31, 32, 33, and 35. You ready?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
And we are playing Season 25, Episode 1, WrestleMania 25.
Employee of the month.
You want me to be on mute for it, or you want me to have the audio?
Mute it. So, yeah. Seeing the promo of Shawn Michaels here, getting ready for WrestleMania.
Sir, if there's anybody who want to face The Undertaker at the not 25th anniversary of WrestleMania, it was the 24th anniversary.
It's the little things.
It's the little things.
And of course, that's the tagline of the match. You know, it's hell trying to get to heaven.
Absolutely.
So extraordinary, no one could ever think of replicating it.
You get the promo package now, a small package of all his WrestleMania victories. Seriously, a who's who of opponents. Now you get to see Shawn Michaels matches. Everything he's done at WrestleMania.
You know, it's funny. I was just reading about earlier today. Shawn Michaels was supposed to shake Cena's hand after the Mania 23 match, and then he didn't live on camera. Like he on his own, like just all script, like did not do it because he was pissed as shit at him. Because if you go back and watch the match, he for like a good 5-10 minutes in the beginning works on Cena's leg, and Cena sells it for a while, but then for the rest of the match, never sells it again. Never sells it again. And Shawn was so mad, supposedly, and like told anybody and everybody who would listen backstage just how irate he was about it. And so he's walking up the ramp, and he was supposed to shake Cena's hand in the ring, like kind of like what Rock and Cena did at Mania 29. Supposed to kind of put him over that way. Shawn didn't do it, obviously, and he's just walking up the ramp. So Cena runs halfway up the ramp, and it was a long ramp. If you saw that Ford Field ramp that they had for Mania 23. Runs up to catch up to him, catches up to him. They stop Cena's music. He goes for the handshake. Shawn looks at the camera, looks at Cena, shakes no with his head, and just walks away. And I just thought about that because you were saying like they were showing all of Shawn's Mania moments, and they just showed his entrance at Mania 23, and they showed him working Cena. And in my head, I just thought like, you were that mad about him not selling the leg, huh?
Yeah, well.
I can see that though.
Like I said, it's the little things.
It just like it genuinely makes me sad when I watch these back, like to know that there are people younger than us who only have this to watch back to see Undertaker. Like they're never gonna get to like experience that, like the mystique, the aura, the entrance, the eye roll, the thunder, the fire, the gong, everything.
Like who was I talking to? Randy Turco, I think, said it when one of our watch-alongs. He says, there was never a point where I was alive that The Undertaker was not wrestling.
Yeah, same for me, dude. 1996 was when I was born. I was born the day before WrestleMania 30, not 30. I was born on March 30th. The WrestleMania 12 was on March 31st of 96. I was born the day before Mania 12 when he was working Diesel.
Amazing. But isn't that something to think about?
He was wrestling like 10 years before I was born. Like he was obviously wrestling in the late 80s, just not for events.
Yeah. I mean, that's, and the way he said it, like, wow, yeah, I was born 2 years after his debut. I was October 17th. So I was like, he's like in there a year and a half or something, almost 2 years. And it's
for events alone, but I mean, in the whole wrestling scheme, at least 5 years.
At least 5 to 6.
Yeah. So like for both of us, yeah, it rings true that like he was always wrestling, like the whole time we were alive.
Yeah.
Like even though I didn't discover who he was until 2007, those 11 years that I was alive, he was an active wrestler on top of the game. And we had no idea. I had no idea. And I'm just lucky that I discovered him when I did. 2007, that's not a bad time to get into it.
Oh, no.
That's like the last 2 years of his full-time run.
Yeah.
Then you get to see him once a year, 2-3 times a year if you're lucky. And, I still saw like a handful of WrestleManias. And like being at 29, 30, 32, and 33, and 34 live, those are 5 different WrestleMania matches of his I saw in person.
Yeah.
Speaking of 34, I want to do something for you. While Sean's making his entrance.
Yeah, Sean is making the iconic, as we were talking about, the mirror version of Undertaker, all in white.
But we also talked about how I was wearing this when I was at Mania 34.
Yes, your pendant.
But I was also holding something else when I was at Mania 34.
That's right. And if anybody knows where he is going with this, if you've seen the Last Ride documentary, or any documentary that WWE has put out concerning the Undertaker.
24, the WrestleMania New Orleans 24 documentary. Those are the only 2 that you will see that footage of me.
Yes, that you will see the footage of Eamon holding his iconic I flew 1,000 miles to see the Undertaker sign. And
this is the only way I have to prove to people that I am the guy who was in the video footage, because there are still people to this day that don't think it was me. You can see the pendant that I'm wearing here clear as day in the footage, but if that's not enough, here we go. This is right here, the original sign that I made myself, and I actually have some video footage on my Snapchat that like shows you like the whole process of me like drawing this out and sketching it out. The actual design of Taker, I did literally with all ballpoint pen and Sharpie, and then everything else was done. Like the tracing of the words was all done with ballpoint pen and then just filled in with Sharpie and other colors. But I wanted to get the New Orleans like vibe for sure, and the colors of everything. And I put the WWE logo in the W for I flew. Just kind of put an extra little taste there.
That's definitely something I would have him sign next time.
Yeah, and that was also why I put the little empty section up here in the corner, just to have a place for him to sign. So, I mean, no, this is definitely something that's going to get framed one day and then get signed. But, like, for anybody who doesn't think I was the guy who gets to, honestly, in a way, represent the fans of The Undertaker around the world. Like, in a way, I get to kind of represent the creatures of the night. And that right there, you see that camera shot I'm talking about?
Yes. And
the camera rising.
And something very different here, as soon as Shawn Michaels stops his entrance, you get the immediate gong. There is no lull. There's no downtime. Michaels finishes the entrance and you get the gong right away.
And it's almost like Shawn knew that would happen too, because you see him. It's not like Shawn was standing on the second turnbuckle looking out at the crowd, pandering to the crowd, and the gong rang. He was standing there like as if he was expecting it. Like it was almost like he was saying without saying, again in their Shakespearean art form, that their history of the last 20 years would indicate that he he knew Taker was going to come that fast. Same way as he did at Mania 24.
Seeing his entrance never gets old.
Never, dude. And I love I can see the fire reflecting off the wall behind you as you're watching this. I love it. It makes me smile, man. And when I was at Mania 34, so again, that camera shot I was telling you about where the crane is in the back of the center and it rises over the fans, you could see the cameraman in New Orleans in the Superdome. You could see them setting up the crane for Undertaker's entrance shot that they would do all the time, as they just did here too for Mania 25. And they were setting up that crane while Elias was coming out, like to do that interaction with Cena. So like I knew that Taker was coming. In large part just from seeing those camera guys set up the crane. Like I was just like, oh, that they're for sure setting up the shot that they always do for Taker's entrance, which they ended up showing. But I love that for that Mania, just in general, for Mania 34, from where I was sitting, because I was directly across the stage. I was on the other side, like on the front row risers. I was close enough that fire, like you could feel the fire.
Oh yeah, I can
coming off the stage. And like when it would do it's not its standard, like just the little, balls here and there. When it would do its big, like, every 3 or 4 rounds, you would feel that.
Oh yeah.
Like it felt like I was standing like 5 feet away from like a very high powered space heater. Like I was like, holy shit. And so I can't even imagine how hot it felt for the people that were like on the other side of the arena on the floor, as close to the stage as possible. Like they must have been like dripping sweat from it. But like just to be in the arena and feel the heat from the fire as Taker's coming out, to be able to see the silhouette of him, because like they wouldn't have a spotlight on him and you would just see the all black shadow with nothing else but just the silhouette of him. It's the little things like that to be incredibly grateful for.
Oh yeah.
And I'm to this day jealous as shit of everybody who was in that building live for this match. Like what a treat.
I know, right?
And this should have been the main event. The fact that this wasn't the main event is a travesty. That bald guy right there in the front with the Mania 25 shirt, he's one of the most into it throughout the whole match. Like he has some of the best.
Right next to him is Undertaker's son.
What?
Yeah, the redheaded kid.
Shut up!
No.
Shut up!
No, that's
Is
Undertaker.
that a kid he had with Sarah?
No, his first wife.
Wasn't that Sarah, or was that a second wife?
Sarah's the second.
So,
Right next to him on the other side. This.
but the redhead kid is clearly with that older guy who's sitting next to the bald fuck. So who's he? Is that Taker's brother?
Yeah, I think it is. He looks like him. Looks a little bit.
Is
like
that Taker's brother?
Yeah, I think
The
so.
one that they talked about on the last ride who died right before the Boneyard match?
Could be. I know Undertaker is like 4 brothers.
I did not. Wow, dude. He just blew my mind. I did not know that was Taker's kid.
Yeah. Because you see him also at 32 with Shane. He's older.
Is he at 32? I did not know that.
Yeah, 32.
I was there too, live, but I obviously had no idea.
He's right next to Michelle, who in turn is right next to Linda. It's so funny.
That's so bizarre. There's a guy too who you can see on the hard cam side, who's basically sitting on the same side that Taker's son is, and he's in the center. You can see him right there taking pictures. He's like second row, third row. He's African American descent. He looks somewhat like Kofi Kingston there. He's got a
African descent.
Huh?
He's African American descent. I like how you.
Offensive. offensive in any way. He's clearly of African-American descent. As you can see right there, he's taking pictures on like a very like professional looking camera.
Really?
I would just say, I would love to figure out who that guy is. And I would love to see even one or two like prints of his pictures that he took during that match.
I know, he's like always taking photos.
He's taking photos throughout the whole thing, either while he's sitting down or while he's standing. The whole match, he takes picture after picture after picture. I would love to see some of those shots that he got. Because it's not like one of those standard Kodak cameras like those guys have in the front row. He's got like one of those like professional cameras.
Yeah. And Undertaker's getting the most offense here in the match. Nice reversal here. Oh, I like that move from Shawn where he does the thing on the turnbuckle.
If I had a shot for every time the chop was done in this match, I'd be dead.
Oh, I bet.
I'd be dead. I think what made this match so great too is that it was called by Jerry and Jim Ross.
Yeah, you get Jim Ross on announcing. Jim Ross
Very minimally by Michael Cole. Michael, like, that's what I respect about Michael in this match. He recognized he should not have been talking a lot. And so he didn't. He kind of backed off and let Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler command the moment. He would come in every now and again and say some stuff here and there, but it's mostly Jim Ross who.
Oh, I love Jim Ross, and I have said it on many occasions. Most of the times I watch AEW is for Jim Ross.
Right, and I'm just saying Michael did the right thing there by letting Jim take control and call it, because it should have been Jim calling this match like at the forefront, and then let Jerry and Michael kind of come from behind. But that is honestly, Jim was like the most prominent one calling it. Jerry being second, and then Michael being third, and I appreciate that because Michael, he took a humble pill and he just he took a back seat and let Jim Ross call this, and because of that, we got some of the most iconic calls ever. Like I think instead of hearing Michael Cole yell, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me!" when Shawn kicked out of the tombstone, having Jim Ross yell instead, "I am not believing this." That was way better. And then having Michael just come in there at the end and go, "What on earth?" Like I'm satisfied with that. And then Michael comes in again with just, "By all rights, this should have been it." And Jim Ross hits the iconic last rides, choke slams, tombstones, and a kick out, and a kick out, and a kick out. And that whole just, once again, just, Michael would just say one or two sentences here and there, and then just let Jim, do the rest. And whenever Michael did say one or two sentences, he made them count. He would say like something like, "By all rights, this should have been it." Or then right then after, when Taker's on his knees and Shawn has not moved since the tombstone, Michael Cole says, "Shawn Michaels did say that my light will forever outshine your darkness." And so it was like, he made his one or two sentences count. He didn't speak often, but when he did, he made it count. And that was something I really appreciated because a lot of times he sounds like a fucking idiot out there. And so, every time he spoke, he sounded like a respectable commentator, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like Undertaker put Shawn through the announce table and Michael Cole went, "Undertaker put Shawn through the ladder."
What the?
Because if you watched TLC last year when Roman Reigns fought Kevin Owens, he power bombs Kevin Owens through a ladder, and Michael Cole yells, "Owens went spine first through the table," as he goes through a ladder. And then he says it again when they show the replay in the corner on the camera. He says it again.
Wow.
So he not only says it once live, he says it again on the replay. And so and again, that's obviously 10 years removed from this, but Michael has had moments, many moments out there.
It's like a glitch in a video game.
Well, he's had moments where, like, to the point where Triple H felt like he had to say on the first SmackDown that was taking place in the Performance Center, like during the pandemic, when it was Triple H and Michael Cole on the headsets, Triple H goes, "I do have to get back to the backstage now, and I'm going to go ahead and let you take over here, even though, a lot of people think you're not very good at your job." So And he like outright on camera live said Michael Cole's not good at commentating. And then when he's holding the camera for Michael Cole, and he's like filming Michael Cole as Michael's making the announcements, Michael goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And Triple H goes, "We're short-handed tonight, Michael. We can't all just have one job and not be very good at it."
Love me some Triple H.
He literally spent, why do you think he had a fucking cardiac event? He was taking out real anger on Michael Cole there by passively aggressively telling him, "Hey, you fucking suck at your job, man."
I love that series of events from Undertaker, you know, the snake eyes, the big boot, the leg drop.
Yeah, that right there is exactly what I was talking about. When me and my mom saw Undertaker at Night of Champions in 2010, he
That comeback sequence.
Well, yeah, he spends the whole match succumbing to Kane because they're making Kane look like the superior brother. And then he comes back in that comeback and he hits everything that we just saw, but also a flying clothesline. We get the flying clothesline, then the snake eyes, then the boot, then the leg drop, and Kane kicks out of it. So, I mean, everything that you just talked about loving to see in the sequence. It's those little things that people who got to see him live,
it's a little,
that, hopefully got to see those sequences of moves. Because I saw him pretty much perform every move of his live. The only move of his I didn't see him do live is the iconic, bouncing off one rope and then running to the other side and jumping over the top rope to the outside.
My favorite.
He teased it at Mania 29, but Paul Heyman ran up there, remember, and got on the apron. And so, but he teased it. He ran to one side and he made you think he was going to fucking take off. And I remember screaming to my mom, "He's going to fucking take off." And then, like, right before he did, he stopped himself and grabbed Paul by the throat. And you can hear everybody in there just boo.
I love that move.
Right, because we were teased with it, and then we didn't get it. So you can hear everybody just boo. Us not getting it. I mean, he had that crossface on for a while.
Yeah, I know. A lot of mat wrestling. He's getting his wits about him.
And now we're seeing, once again, what we're going to see at the very end of the match, where it just goes back and forth trading bombs. He just hit him with a right. Shawn comes back with a chop. Taker comes back with a right. Here's a chop again, followed by another. Like,
he should not be taking shots. He should not be taking shots for his amount of chops.
Just trading bombs for chops, right? And that's the very end of the match. When they've hit each other with every move they have, and they both have kicked out of everything. Then it boils down to they both use each other to get back up, just to get vertical. They hold on to each other and are clawing at each other's face just to stand up. Then once they stand up, it's trading back and forth, chop, punch, chop, punch. So it was cool that we got a little preview of that there. I always loved Taker selling. Like Taker, when he would take a move and it would disorient him, he would still come back at you. But as he would walk at you, he'd walk at you spaghetti leg with his hands like this. He'd come at you with he's all disoriented, he's spaghetti leg, but he's moving like this, but he's got his hands up. Always loved that way he would sell. I still think Taker's all around the best seller, best worker, best character, best entrance.
Of course. You're not gonna get any argument here.
Ooh,
almost.
I fall for that every time. I forget every time that he goes for the sweet chin and Taker still takes the bumps. Like, I always get thrown off by that. I'm like, whoa, and right there, it's apparent how much he's balding even then. That being Shawn, when he was in the Hell's Gate there, you could see even then how much he was balding back then. Which is funny, actually. I was at Target earlier today and I saw the basic series Shawn Michaels figure from the Crown Jewel when he came out of retirement.
The ball.
The head scan is abysmal and he's bald. Like it's Mr. Clean. Like not even like a little bit of stubble showing up. Clean. And the picture on the back of the card is just clean. Like, and his face just looks so sad. Like he just looks like a fucking he looks like a dad. He looks like a dad for like a fucking 15-year-old high school like basketball player.
That's definitely that's a description.
That's what it looked like. And I saw that today and I was looking at it in Target just like this. I almost bought it just because of how sad it looked. And just
I almost bought it because of how sad it looked.
I almost bought it just because like it made me laugh that hard. Like I just wanted, like I was like, this is just a joke of a Shawn Michaels figure. Like when you look at the defining moments WrestleMania 25 action figure of Shawn Michaels, and then you look at his fucking basic series, bald ass fucking crown jewel, clown fool fucking figure. It's just night and day. I wanted to buy it just as like a fucking, you know, those figures you see where the packaging says it's Rusev with the US title, and then the figure on the inside is fucking John Cena and it's the Intercontinental Championship. You know those like mispackaged figures, and then you buy them just because they're mispackaged, just for the rarity of it. Straight up, I wanted to just buy that Shawn figure just for the rarity of this is such a sham of what Shawn figures used to look like. Like it's almost like one of those like, here's what your brain looked like before you were on drugs. Here's what your brain looked like after the drugs. It's like those sort of things. Here's what a Shawn Michaels figure looked like when he was an active wrestler. And then here's what a Shawn Michaels figure looked like when Saudi Arabia came knocking. So like that sort of thing. Just for the fucking like just before and after shot, but like the reverse. Like we have a before and after shot of somebody when they're 300 pounds and then, you know, after they did all this exercise, but a reverse before and after. Like
I totally agree.
The before was way better than the after. Way better. And now fucking talking about wrestler sons, here comes Jimmy Snuka's son as the cameraman.
Oh my God.
Botches his only job.
You had one job. You had one job and you fail.
And right before it happens, you have the iconic Jerry Lawler. Because right before anything like big would happen, Jerry just would shove both of his testicles as far up into his body as he could and let out just the highest pitch, just belch.
Oh my gosh. God, oh my
And then
God.
Michael Cole with the, oh my!
It hurts every time seeing it.
You can see his head print on the padding right there.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Not even near real life tragedy could stop this match from going down in history as the greatest match ever. You can see right there. Look at the referee next to the padding. It's literally the depth of like half of your arm. Like it was like half an inch of padding over concrete floor that caught Taker's head.
I can't
And
believe
you can see his head print right there next to him. That's just insane. Like, this shot right here is the worst because it just shows his whole body come down on top of his head.
My God. Guy had one
You
job.
just see his eyes too and the reaction thereafter. Just like, man, that fucked me up.
He had one job and he fucks up.
But like, it's not even like Taker landed like in a diagonal. You know what I mean? Like where it was like his head, then his body. He landed like it was like you were stuffing something down a tube.
Oh.
Like he landed perfectly on his head, like center on his head. The rest of his body and his spine and his legs came down perfectly, like on him. There was no like diagonal of any kind. That was just oof.
My God.
I'm surprised he didn't fuck up his back on that landing.
I know.
Like
So
he
good.
landed. That jump alone was like, because the ring is at least like if we're assuming that top rope from the ground is at least 10 feet off, maybe give or take 8 or 9 feet off the ground. Him jumping gets you from the ring at least fucking, because he cracks out at 7 foot. So if we're saying that rope is going to be at about the 6 foot mark, him jumping over it, he's getting up there at about 8 feet. Then you've got going all the way down to the floor. I would say it was at least a 12 foot, 13 foot drop directly down on his neck.
So
the fact that he didn't get worse hurt than what he got,
I was just
landing on not even an inch padding of, like, it's not even padding. He pretty much landed on the concrete floor from a 12 foot, 13 foot drop. And he didn't get fucked up.
I was just about to say, thank God he didn't crack his neck or get paralyzed or anything.
He could have, but he could have also herniated a disc.
Yeah.
He could have compacted his spinal cord. He could have, forget the neck. It could have been, he could have not even been able to walk. He could have been paralyzed from his waist down from that. He could have messed up his spine or his disc or his neck in some way that he could have even gotten up. But the fact that he got up and not only finished the match, but put on what is still considered the greatest match of all time, that just goes back to, I think, the main part of our conversation in this podcast. It just goes back to, something bigger than us, written in the stars. This match was destined to happen that way. And Jimmy Snuka's son fucking up his only job was not going to make this match not happen the way it was destined to.
And it's just the person Undertaker is. He's going to continue it.
Right, and that's what makes Mark Calloway, as we talked about before, just how tough he is. And I love this little, salute back to Mania 24 the year before, where Shawn is teasing, finishing it. And you hear Jerry Lawler yell right there, "This is just like Flair." And then, bam, he reverses it with that really high choke slam.
And that slow count that
Undertaker, can he do it here? And Michael's kicked out. And that just begins.
That slow count, like you were talking about before. That slow count, he's kicking out. He's kicking out.
The disbelief in the eyes of the dead man. Once again, Michael Cole, he would just say a one little just line sentence here and there. And when he did, it would make sense and it would count. And right there, just him saying, the disbelief in the eyes of the dead man. That's to this day has been one of my favorite calls from this whole match. Anybody who tells me Michael Cole's not a good commentator, I tell them to go back and watch this. Say what you will about Michael Cole, but he did not do a bad job calling this.
Oh, he got the sweet chin. Yeah.
Here we go. He got it. And there's the little salute to Mania 23. Shawn got the sweet chin music, but he had to crawl and then just get the one arm across, just like he did with Cena. And then once again, there's the kick out. That super kick was just so well done. The sound, and the kick, it was just great.
I can't believe the jump over the rope happens maybe 10 minutes into the match? Maybe a little less?
No. This match clocks out at 30 minutes. That spot happens at least 15 minutes in.
So that's halfway. So he does halfway.
So yeah, the halfway, I would say. 15, 16 minutes in. And then he does the last half, which is fucking what makes this match the greatest match of all time, while probably on his fucking most disoriented high horse imaginable.
The counter into a counter.
That visual right there, him grabbing Shawn by his neck and pulling him out from under his legs and standing him upright. That is one of the coolest visuals I've ever seen. Ever. That visual right there of Taker trying to keep his balance, bending down, grabbing Shawn by his ears and his neck, and then pulling him out from under him
and then Undertaker just
standing him upright.
Just furious that he can't get the 3 count there.
Oh yeah, the way he has that fit. Oh, and those are the subtle starting, points of you seeing him go into that place of being human and almost being desperate because up to this point he's never.
He needs this. He needs to beat Michaels because he's never beaten him before.
That's what I'm saying. So that frustration is coming from someplace else entirely because the frustration is at the fact that he's never beaten him. And so now he's like, oh, like, seriously? Still? Like, I still can't beat you? And I love this too. Like, I've never beaten you, so I'm going to go for a move I've never gone for before at WrestleMania.
A move almost like what Michaels does, the top rope elbow.
Right, but it's also going back to like, I've never beaten you, so maybe to beat you, I have to do something I've never done before. Maybe the secret in beating you isn't in my move, in the tombstone. Maybe beating you is by doing something I've never done before. And so the fact that he felt that desperate, that he had to do something he's never done before, is just another way of showing you him going to that place of being human. This is literally I still say this is the greatest kick out in all of WrestleMania history. Number 2 being Austin kicking out of the stunner at Mania 17.
Oh yeah, here it is.
But this is the greatest kick out in WrestleMania history, in my opinion. Everybody thinks it's over here. You see everybody in the crowd putting up their 17-0 signs. You see that guy in the second row right there, grab his sign and get it and put it up.
The most iconic facial expression.
That visual, his face underneath the star. That face, man. That's fear. Undertaker being scared for the first time. Like, that was just choke slams, last rides, tombstones, and a kick out, and a kick out, and a kick out.
You were just waiting for that.
Fucking know I was. And now here's probably Michael Cole's greatest call of the whole match. Shawn Michaels said that my light will forever outshine your darkness.
Shawn Michaels said that my light will forever outshine your darkness.
Boy, it's like clockwork right there with you.
Dude, it's the Sheldon Cooper side of me coming out. I don't only know the line, but I know exactly like when it comes.
There is focus.
Uh-oh.
And for the first, we get the throat slash here in the match.
The straps come down. Look at those trees of legs, man. He's so, like, just how tall he is. Those legs, dude.
I still can't believe.
Oh.
And that DDT that doesn't even come close to Taker's head hitting the mat.
Undertaker's head has taken enough damage in this match.
Right, I was gonna say I don't blame Taker for not bringing his head even close to the mat for that. I don't, but that's the only part of the match that doesn't look flawless. The rest of the match is picture perfect. But that's the only, because if they had been turned, if Taker's back was to the hard camera, when they did that spot, you wouldn't have seen where Taker's head went. You know what I mean? You would have seen him go down, but you wouldn't have seen like how high above the mat his head actually was. But because of the way they did it facing the hard camera, it obviously made it look really, really phony. So for a non-wrestling fan, if you're showing them this match and you're trying to tell them this is the greatest match of all time, they're going to see that spot and be like, really, dude? But that's just the difference between people who actually appreciate this and people who don't. Here's my favorite Jerry Lawler call of this whole match right here. This is my favorite Jerry Lawler call. It's like his body's on autopilot. It's like he doesn't even know what he's doing, but he's doing it. Like Jerry Lawler line, because like the fact that like when he gets himself to the top, when he's got his hand on both top ropes and he's got his feet on both of like the top part of the turnbuckle, you see Shawn literally sway all the way to one side, like the wind is blowing on it. And then he pulls himself back to center and gets himself, you know, in the center of gravity. And it's in him doing that. It's as he's swaying all the way to one side and getting himself back in center that Jerry says that line. I love that line. It's like his body's on autopilot. He doesn't even know what he's doing, and yet he's doing it. And he says right there too, he may not get it. He's going for the sweet chin music. He may not get it. Watch that guy right next to supposedly Undertaker's brother, the bald guy. Look at him. No, yeah. I fucking love that dude's reactions. Like, he's my spirit animal for that match. Like, that dude deserved to be there front row for that match. Like, he was so heart and soul into it.
I
This
know.
match is such a gem, man.
The legendary Undertaker. The legendary Shawn Michaels.
My favorite selling point here, too, of Taker. So Shawn's going to hit that chop. Taker's going to hit a right. Shawn's going to hit another chop. Taker's going to hit another right. Shawn's going to hit the first right that Shawn hits. Taker grabs the rope, and he does this really awesome sell. He goes like, it's weird. It's almost like a worm effect. He goes down, but he pops right back up.
Yeah.
And it's like one knee, then one hand, then both knees, then both hands. And he bounces right up. Here it is. This. I love this. I don't know how he did it. This. Right here. Down, up. I love that. It looks so real. It looked like he was like this close to passing out. But he just pulled himself up. Like, he just snapped out of it. It's like Undertaker does not get enough credit for being the seller that he is.
I know.
Like, when he's disoriented and he turns around, he does that whole like with his hands, like getting his hands up, or just falling to a knee and literally slamming his hand on the mat and just throwing himself back up. It's just like, he never got enough credit for being the seller that he was.
Undertaker's chest is just like beat red from all these.
You beat me to it. I was just gonna say, his chest it's reminiscent of Daniel Bryan's during the Greatest Royal Rumble.
I remember that. Yeah, you bring that up. I remember that.
That was insane. Like, yeah, he was in there for over an hour, but like, I don't remember him taking that many chops. Because his chest was like at least twice as red as Taker's. And I don't even remember him taking even half of the chops in the entire Greatest Royal Rumble match that Taker did in this match. Unless I'm wrong. Like, maybe I should go back and rewatch it and count how many chops Daniel took. But like, I don't remember how his chest got that red.
Oh, here we go.
The fact that after landing on his head too, and after working for 30 minutes, he had the strength to catch Shawn like that.
And it's over.
And my favorite part about that too, in terms of symbolism and story, up until the moment Shawn's lights were out, or until the moment you'd say his soul was taken, you see him, you see his legs kicking back and forth, you see his arms, you see his hands clawing up and down Taker's body, doing anything he can to escape the grip of the Grim Reaper. So like, you could relate that to anybody like me who's very fearful of death itself. Like, I'm not somebody who's gonna like go quietly into the night. I'm like Shawn, like all the way up until the moment I die. I'm gonna be scratching and clawing and kicking and trying to get out. And then up until the moment my lights are out. So like, up until the second Taker hit that tombstone, Shawn, with everything he has, is desperately, frantically fighting out. And then it's done. And it's just that,
and
what they tell right there without any words.
You put
It's
it.
amazing.
You put it great. I mean, I can't add anything to that. He is literally trying to escape the clenches of death here. You know,
He
Undertaker.
literally threw himself into the arms of the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
Who fought him. And so he fought with everything he could to get out.
And
And
as
it
we
just
see-
wasn't enough.
We see here, he tried it the first time here with Undertaker's first attempt at the tombstone. He was doing the same thing.
And this is the only time in the match that Taker's son, the redhead, actually gets shocked or popped. If you look behind him right here, you'll see him.
I know.
Look at him. Now he's like, that's the only time in the match his ungrateful ass pops. The rest of the match, he doesn't even stand at any point. He just sits in the chair and just watches. Like here, I wouldn't even really react all that much to this kick out either. Look at him.
But now,
A little bit, but not really. Now this, like, look at how hard he fights out. The
I know.
kicking, the scratching, up until the moment he's out. And then once he hits the tombstone, you see Shawn's arms stretch all the way out, like he went, like he lost his life, like he literally went limp. And now, as we talked about before, the first one of the four is without pyro.
17-0 at WrestleMania, the end of our first watch along in a series of 4, which will take
I
us.
find it weird though that there was no pyro for that one, because the year
I-
before at Mania 24 there was pyro for the 16-0, and then for Mania 26 when it went 18-0 there was pyro as well. There's nothing here but the flames.
Yeah, there's nothing there but the flames. I did notice that.
There's no pyro. Like what?
Yeah.
Like why didn't they do that? Because they did it the year before. I always wondered why they didn't do it.
I wonder why either.
It's a budget thing, kid. We didn't have the money for the pyro. It's a budget thing.
But a great match, just as great as everybody says it is. And it's the starting off point.
And
Starting
for
off,
anybody watching this podcast with us, who and I mean I'm willing to believe that there is at least 1 or 2 people that are going to be watching this podcast watch along with us, and it's going to be their first time seeing this match. And so for anybody who is having that experience, I would like you to know how grateful I am, at least, that I got to be a part of your first time seeing this match.
I agree, as am I, because if you were not there to witness it live on pay-per-view or live in the arena, it is just an amazing match to watch that.
Right. And just even up to this day, if you never saw it on YouTube or on the network or even on the cock, just if you never saw it up until today, if your first time seeing what is considered the greatest WrestleMania match or the greatest WWE match of all time is with, you and I right now. I know for me, I'm very humbled by that fact that there's somebody who's being introduced to this match by our, retelling of it. And so that's pretty cool when you think about it.
It is really cool. It is really cool, that I have the ability to bring a lot of these Undertaker matches, maybe for the first time, to a lot of people.
And for a lot of people, you may not even know it. You may be creating Undertaker fans out of nothing. Like your podcast and your retelling of what we grew up with might actually be continuing to create Undertaker fans you don't even know that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing to think about too.
I hope it is. And it's another thing to tell the man himself if I get a chance to meet him again.
Because of course we're going to do that again.
Yes. Knock on wood. And I cannot wait until part 2, not only part 2 of our watch along, but Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, part 2. Streak versus
Yes, sir. That's going to be awesome.
Versus career. Watch along part 2. We managed to keep this under 3 hours. And I think
Wait, you know what I would say, with that being a full-on interview and with getting the watch along in, I'm cool with that. That's a cool clock in time.
definitely. I think it is an amazing interview that my listeners got a treat to listen to all your stories. And I think at next time when we join here for WrestleMania 26, I think take my listeners on a little trip through like WrestleMania 30, 32, and 34. Get your experiences there, and then we'll jump right into 26 to Undertaker Shawn Michaels 2.
I like that, man. That's pretty cool. How I didn't even notice that. I mean, I noticed that before we started the watch along. Excuse me, when you asked me if I wanted to start or if I was ready to start, I remember thinking to myself, well, that's kind of peculiar. He didn't ask about 30 or 32 or 33.
Oh,
I like that. We're gonna kind of space it out between. I like that. Very smart.
Gotta have the little hook here to bring the people back.
Exactly. And you know what? It's pretty cool. We didn't talk about. I know we'll talk about it in the later episodes, but because we talked about the 2019 meet and greet that we both did, I kind of prefaced who the person was that I met before Undertaker, but I didn't tell you who. I went to that Cricket Wireless right outside of Rosemont the morning of that same meet and greet to meet Sasha Banks.
Oh, nice.
Got Sasha that morning, got her to sign the chair, and then literally like sprinted, because like I barely got there in time. Sprinted to Rosemont, got to the Stevens Convention Center, ran in, got my tickets at the ticket claim desk, and literally got in line for the photo op, like just as they were like finishing up, like the last maybe hours worth of people.
I remember that.
So, like, I got in on the photo op line like right at the end, but then I was in the autograph line with everybody else without having to worry about it. But like just trying to meet Sasha, like I almost fucked myself over by not getting to meet Taker, but it worked out perfect. Like, and it worked out perfect because like obviously nobody knew at that time. We were just 3 months or 4 months away from the world kind of shutting down. And I got to hug Sasha for that. And I know she's someone who's very anti-vax like myself. Fucking props to her for that. But, you know, in that time, like, I mean, obviously nowadays, like, I think it's going to be a while before at meet and greets, you know, the wrestlers are going to be hugging their fans. It's going to be a while before that happens. So, you know, to have had the opportunity to not only meet Sasha, but I remember like right before I met her, I said to the guy who was in line right behind me, I was like, fuck it, I'm going for it. I'm gonna hug her. And it was cool like how receptive she was of that and like how like appreciative she was of like all of her fans, you know, whether they were kids, whether they were moms, whether they were men, whether they were dads, like she loved everybody that met them. And like we had to fucking stand outside in the freezing cold.
I remember how cold it was that day.
And I was outside of Cricket Wire, the meet and greet. So she did an interview strictly for YouTube with Sheamus and The Miz. So Sheamus and The Miz were there. And Miz was like outside of the Cricket Wireless talking to the fans for a few minutes, not like meeting them. They just had somebody for WWE like with an iPhone filming him to put it on YouTube. And he was interacting with the fans and just announcing what they were going to go do inside. And then it was him and Sheamus and Sasha doing an hour-long interview thing that was from 10 to 11. And then the signing started at 11. I fucking got there at like 8:30 in the morning. And the line was already down the fucking block, like down the block. And there were people that were sitting like in lawn chairs with blankets on them that told me that they had driven down from Michigan or like from Indiana for that. Oh. And like, because wrestling fans are legit. Like when it's a Cricket Wireless signing where you don't have to pay at all, it's just you get to meet a top tier talent just because like they come from all different states and they wait like a long time. I mean, I literally stood out in the cold from like 8:30 in the morning till about 11. And so like, at least, you know, for Sasha's credit, you know, she didn't have to do that when we met her. She pretty much thanked and apologized to everybody for standing out in the cold individually, which I had a lot of respect for. Like before, like 3 people before I met her, I heard her individually apologize for having to be out in the cold and thanking them for doing it. For me, she personally said, like, I'm really sorry you had to be out in the cold, but thank you for doing that. And I told her, of course, because it was worth it. And I heard her say it to like the other 3-4 people that were after me too, when I was grabbing my phone from the guy who took the pictures. And so for anybody who likes to complain, oh, so she's not nice to the fans, bullshit. But I think it was cool that on the day that you and I both met Undertaker for the first time, you and I experienced the same Undertaker meet and greet. There was the added bonus of the Sasha signing. Did you know that was happening?
I did not. Remember,
Oh, it would have been cool if we had been
tunnel
at the
vision,
same.
tunnel vision for Undertaker.
Right, that's true. I'm just saying though, how crazy would it have been if not only we both were at the Sasha and the Taker signing, how crazy would it have been if we both were at the signing and didn't even know it? And then all this time later, we do the podcast and it's like, wait, you were at both of those? Like,
Right.
that's some like real, like small world shit.
Well, to make up for that, we definitely have to meet in person one of these days. And
Yes. Maybe even at the next Undertaker signing.
we
Or
have-
are you planning on going to Dallas for WrestleMania? Especially with everything I talked about with it probably being Taker's final anything.
right now, how can I say no? I may try and find a way down there. All depends with work and everything else like that.
Well, I was gonna say at the very least, if you're down to go to the fucking Hall of Fame, we can go to the Hall of Fame together and see his speech.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think I'm already going to the show itself, WrestleMania. I think I'm already going with a couple friends of mine. But the Hall of Fame, if he gets announced as a first ballot Hall of Fame, I could fucking score 2 like nice seats for us, and then we could just meet at the show, something like that.
I think that sounds like a plan.
And that's like if it happens on the 31st of March, that's 24 hours removed from my birthday. So that'd be a really cool experience.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
Let's plan on it. Fuck it. Why not? If something happens and it changes, then it changes. But for right now, let's plan on going to the Hall of Fame.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's
Cool.
do it. And we can do a live podcast episode there together.
That's a great idea. I didn't even think of that. That's fucking genius, dude.
There you
It's
go.
official. It's official.
There you
We'll go to the
go.
Hall of Fame together. We'll do an episode there. Hey, you know what? You could even get another 2 or 3. Because I've seen at WrestleMania 32, outside of AT&T Stadium, when people were just pre-gaming and tailgating, there were a bunch of different independently owned podcasters who were setting up their own shit underneath like a little tent. And they had a bunch of fans kind of gather around and listen to them. And they would have like fans rotate every 5-7 minutes and get up out of the seat, and they would just interview another, fan every 5-7 minutes and get their predictions on the card for WrestleMania. They'd get their, they'd get what match they wanted to see the most, who their favorite wrestler was, and they would do like a quick little, 5-7 minute interview with everybody who was gathered around the table. And it was just a cool way to kind of, just advertise yourself. So I could definitely see us, doing a nice little podcast together outside of the Hall of Fame. And we could just do quick little lightning round interviews with Undertaker fans. Like, what was your favorite Undertaker moment? Why are you here to see the speech? Like, what brought you to the arena to see the speech, sort of thing?
I think that's a perfect idea. That's brilliant.
Like, think of the stories we could learn too. Like, because it's one thing to be a fan of the Undertaker and watch his speech live on TV, but it's another to be such a fan that you feel the need to get there in person and see it. So like, imagine the people we could run into and ask like, hey, what brought you here? Like, what made you such a fan of Taker that you felt you had to be here in person to see the speech? Think of the stories you could hear. There's no limit to what kind of stories and like what kind of serendipitous moments you could discover that for all you know, you were a part of too with that person.
I know, right? I think
Crazy how life works, man. That's like that goes back to, see, it was my destiny to be at the Hall of Fame speech panel.
I think that's there's no topping that. There's no topping how to end from there. I think being at the Hall of Fame live podcast, I think the hook to hear your stories for WrestleMania 30, 32, and 34 for our next installment of the watch along.
Don't forget 33.
Don't forget 33. That's right. Well, I tend to forget a lot about 33.
We all tried to, because it wasn't the best
tried.
Mania, and for whatever reason, Vince thought that Jericho and Kevin Owens was the worst match in all of WrestleMania history, which is really a shame to say when you consider that Big Show fought in a sumo match at WrestleMania 21,
Okay,
but he thought KO and Jericho was the worst match in Mania history. Fuck out of here.
We don't want to end on that note. Big Show in a sumo match. So we will end on promoting. Where can my listeners follow you on Instagram? What is your Instagram handle?
Right before I say that, you know what's crazy that I just thought about? Oh, never mind. I take it back. I was about to sound stupid. I was about to say, Isn't it crazy that Big Show never challenged Taker for the streak? But no, he did. Mania 19. But like he never was his own challenger. You know what I mean? Like
That's
he did it
true.
with A-Train and a handicap. Like you would think someone like Big Show, the world's largest athlete, like you feel like they could have just built an entire year-long I am the one, match along just Big Show going up against Taker. So I find it weird that they never met each other one-on-one at Mania, but at least we got the handicap match that was supposed to be a tag team, but his guy was greener than dog shit and wasn't able to make the match in time. So they turned it into a handicap. But I rest my case. To follow me, I have the same handle for everything. So for TikTok and for Instagram, you can find me at my name, Eamon, Eamon, and then U as in the letter U, and then 22. I don't know if our names on this Zoom meeting will actually show on your podcast footage on YouTube. If it does, I chose the same handle for this Zoom thing here too. So my name on here is also the same thing that you would see on TikTok and Instagram. So Eamon U22, just spelled out as Eamon, and then U, and then number 2 and number 2 again. And you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, pretty much anywhere that social media is shared.
Great. And I encourage all my listeners to follow Eamon wherever you can follow him on social media. He will be back to join me many more times, at least 3 more times for this watch along. We have planned the meetup at the Hall of Fame for a live podcast episode and plenty more in between. I
love that idea, man. That will be really special.
It will be. And as I sign off here each and every week, please follow me on Instagram at Collecting Dead Man, on Twitter at Collect Up Dead. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast on your preferred podcast platform, and follow me wherever you find YouTube, any of social media, and subscribe to the podcast. Leave me a 5-star review. And until next week, same Taker time, same Taker channel. Keep on rolling, baby. And how can I top that as a sign off? Thank you again, Eamon. I can't wait for next time.
Thank you, buddy. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure was all mine.